Hey folks, welcome back to another exciting episode of Loss of Lieutenants. My name is Kevin and I'm your host tonight. And on tonight's show, I'm joined by fellow host
Jacob.
And it's just the two of us tonight. No Valerie. He is down with the sickness.
Something.
I think he's got COVID, so he's not feeling too well, so he wasn't able to join us tonight. But speedy recovery being wished to Val. So on this episode,
get well soon, buddy.
Yeah, on this episode, we will be breaking down the missions for the upcoming ANZAC Cup and talk about list building for the lineup and discuss the broader topic of custom missions in ITS. Why are we talking about custom missions? Well, ANZAC Cup, as you may know, has 2 custom missions in it, which is exciting, but also quite unusual. But first, as always, we will recap some recent games and hobbies. So this will be a good one because we both were at a tournament on the weekend, Jacob, weren't we?
Yeah, yours. Thunder over Helheim.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that both of us got our asses kicked.
We did shite.
Quite thoroughly.
I mean, my excuse is I was TOing. And then I had to play because someone dropped. I don't know what your excuse is, Jacob.
I pretty much practiced with Bakunin because I wanted to play the Anarchy before before the update dropped, and then was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to try attack. And looking back at it, I think I know what I need to try to not get caught the way I did during a tournament.
Well, do you wanna talk about how your day went and any like what the takeaways you have for it? Just as a brief recap, as the one running it. It was.
So I mean,
I was just gonna say.
Sorry,
I was just gonna say before you did get started. For those who don't know, it was three round ITS with a Spec Ops extra. We had 2 custom missions in it. One that I've made called Secure the Admiral, and another one that was made by Rob Wright. Sensor field, and then finishing off with rescue. We had, I think, 16 players on the day, and so anyway, that was just a little bit of background information for those people who did not listen to the last episode. Take it away.
So first mission was secure the Admiral. TAC did what TAC's good at, really bloody match. So again, a sort of thing where like the score didn't really reflect the way that the game went.
Who were you up against?
I was up against Tristan and his Harkislan.
Oh yeah, he was playing Assassins.
With
the unkillable Muyib, which we've realized is a bit fucked in Spec Ops.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. So for anyone who doesn't know, Muyib's the Muyib special op starts off with Bioimmunity Dogged number 2, I think.
Yeah, be it with the BTS, I think with a BTS of 3.
Well, it has a BTS of 3, but because it gets Bioimmunity natively, and upgrading BTS to 9 costs nothing. And they're already BS12, so they're pretty good shots.
BS13.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. Okay, yeah, BS13. It doesn't cost much to make them BTS 12 in cover with
I think he had a
viral sniper rifle.
Yeah. For what, 24 points, I think they are, 25 points, because you pay the extra for the Spec Ops.
Admittedly, I actually killed that Spec Ops pretty early on. The only way that you can really deal with a model like that, which is I got him out of cover and pumped 5 AP dice into him.
Wow. How did you manage to get him out of cover?
So he was on a crate. And there was a area on the map, which was your compound map, that was higher than that crate, or the same height. So I was able to shoot across. Plus I had mimetism, which is, advantage enough. But unfortunately for that particular mission, the 2 things that he had left in the zone, because Secure the Admiral has it's just dominate the center strip, isn't it?
Yeah, so there's an exclusion zone that you have to dominate at the end of each round,
Yeah.
as well as secure the Admiral, which is essentially Civivac the HVT, and basically hold on to it until the end of the game.
Yeah. And so, yeah, because it was a exclusion zone, it meant that TAC's general advantage on holding those things is like having guys in the zone already.
Yeah.
Didn't quite have that. And then the rest of my guys were just not enough points to cancel out an Asawira and a Bukta, which is like 90 points in of itself.
Yep.
So that was the most of his points in that game, was just securing the middle for 3 rounds. And then I think he managed to threaten the Admiral at the very end. Not with his Master Breacher.
Master Breacher, yeah. So the breakdown for that mission is you get 3 points for dominating, or 1 point for dominating the exclusion zone each round, 2 points for pushing the button, 4 points if you are holding the Admiral at the end of the game with your Master Breacher, but you can get 1 point if you're just threatening him, and an extra point if you're threatening with your Master Breacher. So even though it's possible to win, it's probably the easiest, well, the preferred path to victory is to obviously Civivac the Admiral and hold on to it because it's worth the most amount of points. But you can win by just dominating the zone for 3 rounds, pushing the button and doing a classified, which gets you 6. And I don't think that can't be contested. So that can't be beaten. So I think that sounds like what he did.
Yeah, pretty much. It just he like, I pushed up, killed a bunch of things. He pushed up, killed some things. But I just couldn't outpoint Buktar and Asawira. There was not enough points, honestly, in my list that was supposed to be moving around that could outpoint that sort of thing.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Then second round was a TAC v TAC match on a map that just worked a lot against me. It was just too open.
This is Hendrix. This is Hendrix table. I didn't actually take a photo of that table, but it is what you would call a forest table. Yeah. So there's forests, there's rocky outcrops, there's a river that runs through the middle of the table, and like those sorts of things.
Yeah, and it's got terrain that you normally don't see, like the middle of the map. Generally, in Infinity, you have some sort of light sight blocking so that you can't see from end to end. This map didn't have it. I had a really mobile TAC force that moved out with like camouflage and all that sort of thing. But when you don't have that normal sort of, I can hide behind a building, there's just a millions discovers that can be thrown out.
Didn't you play though that the forests are see in, out, but not through? No, you didn't play that way?
We did, but there's still enough lines of sight.
Okay, because I played on that table too, and I felt like actually it really hampered my ARO pieces because I placed them, and then after placing them, I'm going, oh, hang on, I can't see through any of these forests. Shit. Like I can basically see the midway point, and that was it.
Yeah, my opponent James also had like a really ARO heavy TAC list, and it worked quite well. In all honesty. So yeah, and that one still just couldn't do anything. My opponent did well. I did misplace some of my sensors. I could have done a better job of that.
Oh, we'll get into that mission as we get to the podcast for sure, because we've got some opinions on it. We've got some opinions on it.
And again, because that one has an exclusion zone as well, doesn't it?
No, sensor field does not.
No, okay, so sensor field did, yeah.
Rescue does. Rescue and secure the Admiral did.
Yeah, and so the last match, which was against you, Kevin.
Yeah. But it was the battle for bottom table. the battle for wooden spoon, I think it was. So we were
unfortunately sort of let you guys down, but lost the lieutenant did not do well in Kev's tournament.
No.
This is what has led me to knowing that I need a little bit more practice with TAC. Is I just had no answer to that Zaydin link he popped on a bridge. There was going to be no way that mimetism was going to be enough to be BS 16 with marksman.
BS 15 with marksman.
Yeah. That's 15s. With mimetism, it's 15s if you're in good range. You have a sniper and a missile launcher.
Yeah.
looking back at it now, I think a lot of my problems would have been solved by a Spetsnaz parachutist.
Hmm. Well, you
Would have been able.
you did have the Vet Kazakh APHMG. If you got that into range, you could have just diced it. Five dice on what you've been 13s versus 2 dice on 15s. Like that's not bad odds. And the problem is whoever loses that gunfight is going down.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think the main thing for me is if I lost that gunfight, I'd be stuffed. If you lost that gunfight, you still had the two Mukhtars.
Yeah, that's true.
Right,
I still
you
had
still
other
had plenty
guns.
of gunfighters left over after that.
And I did have the missile launcher in that link team, and like you said, the sniper, which is something I'm trying out. Rather than just a single arrow piece, I had two, so you'd have to then deal with the sniper afterwards, which would admittingly be easier, but still not. Again with marksmanship, you're just you go through the 15s, goes down to 13s, which is still not bad.
I kept thinking that if I had like a Kazakh Spetsnaz, I could have killed one of your ARO bots, the flash pulse bot you had up high.
Mm-hmm.
Right, dropped him in, and he would have been able to move to the back with stealth and started shooting like the Gulam or something to start getting rid of their fire team bonuses.
Yeah. I mean, it's tricky in rescue because it does have an exclusion zone, so you'd have that 4-inch strip to play in. It's all you've got, which is fine if you can clear the path. Because I don't think I didn't have eyes. Like I say, outside the flash pulse spot was the only thing I had covering that 4-inch strip. And then I guess you could have gone in round the back and taken apart the link team like that way. And that's true. And I think what you ended up doing instead is you went for the dog warrior, tried to go in and got my link.
That's what like I'm looking back at it now, and the idea of those dog warriors was to chase down something that had grabbed either the admiral or one of the civilians at the end, but all those orders I spent trying to get them down the board, like 4, 3, whatever orders, could have been done with one order dropping down the Spetsnaz parachutist.
Yeah, but then I think that your dog warrior is still a very important part of the equation.
Oh, sorry, not the dog warrior, the antipode. The
Oh,
dog warrior did fine. The antipodes is what I'm talking
instead of
about.
having the antipodes, because
the antipodes is what I'd replace.
Right. Okay. No, I could definitely see that. But they're not comparable points though.
They're pretty close. It's 27 for the antipodes and 30 for the
Okay. Yep.
thing. And in that particular list, I actually had 2 points left over.
Okay. Yeah. No, that would work because when you went with the, I mean, slight segue, but onto the Spec Ops thing. My Spec Ops in that game was a hollow-mast Gulam with a viral rifle and a jammer, which was just they were just on anti dog or bear patrol for that whole event, and they never really got to do anything until our game when your dog warrior jumped on a rooftop to go and attack my link team, and then I was like, reveal jammer, and he was like, "Oh," and he just stood there like a sad dog. He was like, "Oh, I can't shit." So I was glad that came off, because if it didn't, then my link team would have been in a bad way.
I think there's some more practice I need with TAC. I have the unfortunate luck of like fighting the same army over and over again. So I think when I was like learning TAC, I was just fighting O12 constantly. So if I fought O12, it'd be really great, but I was playing people with other tricks.
There was no O12 at that event on the weekend. Everyone's dropped them since last time. Actually, on that, I'll tell you for our listeners what we did have at the event. So we had we had White Banner, which actually went out and took the day, won the day, and not only that, it was won by a player who's his second ever event. He's like brand new player. His only other event has been the slow grow, and he comes into this event, wins it, beats me in round one as well. So yeah, Lewis taken out with White Banner, fucking sterling job. We had 2 Rama task force. I was running one Rama, and then the other Rama that was actually ended up coming second was run by Nick. And we had a good chat after the event actually about his Rama list versus my Rama list. He went with 2 Harrises. I had a core and a couple of duos. So yeah, quite different lists, which is good. We had a shock army, which took third. That was Phil. And actually, I announced Phil as winning the event, but then I had actually done a miscalculation with the objective points. So we went from first to third, but still very good showing. We had Assassins, Steel Phalanx, Nomads. We had 3 TAC players. With the highest ranked TAC player was James, your round 2 opponent. We had a Toha, Corregidor, a couple of Corregidor, a couple of Nomads, an OSS, and a vanilla Ariadna. So I think that's a relatively decent spread. No O12, no combined army, several Ariadna, couple of quite a few Hack Islam players. So not too bad. No NE2. I don't think. Nope, no NE2. So a bit of a different event. Obviously, coupled with it being a Spec Ops, meant that it was a bit of an odd one. I think. I did try to make it a bit more. Like I was aware that you can abuse the Spec Ops rules. Certain factions. For those out there who don't know, like we just talked about the Muyab, that can be abused to fuck because BTS costs less than armor when you're building a Spec Ops, and if you've got bioimmunity, then it's essentially you're just getting cheap armor. OSS can cheat really cheap Deva into there, and there's a few other armies that can get bioimmunity, but like by no means are they broken. So I made some challenges for the day. And actually shout out to our old host Julian, who I actually got this idea from. So I themed all the challenges for the day around Arnold Schwarzenegger, because
that was the model he always used for his Spec Ops.
That was the model that he would always use for his Spec Ops, was the Terminator miniature with the shotgun, and I think it was meant to represent US Ariadna Grunt, and he would always give it 2 wounds, and I think he would do something like give it 2 wounds and increase its armor or something like that, and it would just have a shotgun, and it would just walk around and just gun things down with like a 2 wound armor 3 shotgun. It was really funny. So all the challenges, I think I made 12 of them, and they were all named after Arnold Schwarzenegger quotes. So we had like, "Come with me if you want to live," which was if you rescued the civilian, then you got points. There was "Leave anything for us," which is from Commando, which is like every time you kill a model, then it's like points. There was what else was there?
I still think my favorite was "To be or not to be, not to be."
Oh yeah, to be or not to be.
Dumbest line.
Not to be was the one where if you die in a game, you lose points. And then one that got smashed the fucking hardest by Tristan was the armor saves one, which was, I think it's what's it called? You have struck Hercules, which was from his early Hercules movie when he had really bad English, and you had struck Hercules, and it's like if you pass an armor BTS save, then you get points. And I think Tristan ended up with something like 16 past armor saves for the day, so he instantly won the challenge. Just because he has just accrued so many points. I think Hendrik came last with -3 points because his Spec Ops died in every round but didn't do anything. We had like, there were some challenges which weren't fulfilled. I had one that was called Your Luggage, which is for when you kill a model with three wounds or structure. That never got done, and a few other bits and pieces. But most of the players played their Spec Ops fairly conservatively, usually just to basically in a link team to make it a bit cheaper, and then maybe to double up on the doctor engineer bonus or doctor hacker bonus or whatever like that. You can make it just so that they can save points. I did allow players to put them into fire teams because it doesn't explicitly say you can't. But with the fire team changes, you can argue that you can't because a lot of the spec ops are not called like Gulams. They're called like what's it called? Like they're called.
Yeah, they're generally
they've got
called
like
whatever it is, Intel Spec Ops or something like
yeah,
that.
they've got some kind of name to it. But I was like, nah,
Yes.
we make them link because although I think that might
Sorry,
have been a mistake in hindsight because that then leans into people playing them conservatively.
Yeah, I mean,
Perhaps.
yeah, they take like the Diva's called the Diva Chandra and whatever. But
Yeah. So I think
To be honest, if I remember correctly, when it was like FAQ'd or something like that, that was their response. It might have been an old N3 ruling, but
I think it
so
was an old
fair enough to bring it
N3
to N4.
ruling, yeah. But I think the lessons learned would be to I think Douglas, one of our local players, that he suggests that we just cap the BTS at 6, so that you can't get a BTS 9 or 12 model, which is fine. But I think maybe just not allowing them to go into link teams might also be a fire teams might be a good idea because that then just because that becomes a force multiplier. You know, if you're a BTS 12 with bioimmunity, with a viral sniper rifle, and a fully core link, you're like, yeah, get fucked. Yeah.
Would you? If I mean, it still wouldn't really stop. Whatever.
I would make them like they'd be rolling one dice in arrow rather than two because like by the sounds of things that's what Tristan did with his. He just stood up there in a fire team and was like, "Come at me, bro."
Exactly what he did.
Come at me. He wasn't spending orders on it. He was just like, I'm here. Kill me if you can.
Yeah, I got very lucky. The first shot we had against each other, he rolled 2 13s. He needed 14s.
Oh yeah.
And I'm Ariadna. I don't have any BTS.
Exactly. Yeah, that's bad.
But I was lucky. I was super fucking lucky. Passed all but one armor save, and I'm shock immune. My vet has a shock immune, so just survived. I just was like, okay, I guess I'm going to do this again, and then killed him.
Yeah. I didn't have too many cool stories for my one, just except against you. But yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I want to touch on the event was I was TOing it. I ended up playing, which was not my preferred option. I do prefer to TO fully because Well, yeah, I mean, also it's just such a big brain drain. We ran it at a scout hall, which was actually quite a decent venue. But we had to bump everything in the night before and the morning off, which adds stress. And then when you're running an event which also has these challenges, then you kind of want to be on hand to like help out with people doing the challenges and doing the score sheet and all that sort of thing. When you're having to play 3 games as well, yeah, it's pretty stressful. I was definitely glad to have a beer at the end of the day because we all went to a local pub that does farmhouse inspired or farmhouse style ales, which I really enjoy.
Just tiny potato cakes.
Oh yeah. They had little potato cakes. They were really delicious actually. Super salty.
I love potato cakes, and they were really good.
Yeah, they were nice. So that was nice.
Or potato scallops, depending where you're listening it from.
No, they're cakes. I know, but no, those were definitely cakes because like you bit into them and they were like a mushy thing, not a scallopy thing.
They were almost like a little like potatoey marshmallow.
Yeah. But that was nice to get a bit of a breakdown, like a bit of an unwind with some of the players. Talk about the day, talk about how it went. But it sounds like everyone had a good time, and I was really really delighted to run an event. I do love running events. I do enjoy the just the atmosphere and the seeing people and watch them have a good time or not have a good time.
Do you think people would come out my way, southeast?
Well, you're not southeast though. You're just east.
I'm east southeast. Yeah.
If you're gonna say southeast, that's like Pakenham, which no one's gonna come out there. But you're like
yeah, right. If you're thinking that, because there was actually a store that just opened up, and I've been thinking about it.
Well, I mean, I guess we'll have to move on. But one of the reasons why I ran it at the Scout Hall where I did was because we commonly have a lot of our events out at House of War. Now, people who know Melbourne or know Australia will hear a lot about House of War. It's like the biggest wargaming store in the Southern Hemisphere, or at least used to be. But and it's great, right? It's got a big space, it's got tables, it's got terrain. The owners are really super supportive of the community. Like it's like $5 each for the day. There's a cafe close by. There's parking. It's perfect. Problem with it though is it's way out in the east of town, and if you don't live in the east of Melbourne, it's a 45 to an hour and a half drive, and and also at the moment there's a whole bunch of roadworks or rail works going on with the removal of level crossings, so not everyone can get there by train. So I thought, I'll stuff it. I'm running the event. I'll have one close to my place, which is in the north of the city, which is there to try to help out those people who come from the west, so they're not having to drive as far as going to the east. And then east just have to drive a bit further. And we've got players in the north now who can get there in 10 minutes, which was great. Because, really importantly, I'm really glad I ran my event where I did, because just got to call out one of our local players, Ben, who got there really early. He got there on time. He got there pretty much when the doors open, which is great. And then about 15 minutes before the start of round one, he comes up to me and says, Kev, so I've left my army at home. he opened his case and he had like his Battlefleet Gothic and Malifaux in it, and I was like, well, that's not fucking any use, is it, Ben? He's like, no. I'm like, well, what are you gonna do? He's like, does anyone have a spare army? Of course no one had a spare army, but thankfully I literally lived 5 minutes away from where we had the event. So I went home and grabbed my Starco because he was running Nomads. I was like, well, that's good enough proxies for you. So just ran home, five minets, grabbed the stuff, ran back, had the army back in his hands by 9 o'clock for a start of round one. So that was good, because if we'd had that House of War, he'd have been fucked.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, like there's always players in the east. Like I'm sure Peter or whoever else would have been there potentially.
I could have run home.
You could have potentially run home, but it was just nice as a TO to be like, all right, I'll take the responsibility. I'll go off and get it for you. But anyway, that was the event. It was good, and we'll hopefully get another one run in the next month or so, because it'd be good to get some more regular events, especially as we get into the lead up to Burn City Brawl. Right, anyway, with that out of the way, let's get into some news and announcements. So, actually, no, before we get into news and announcements, I want to recap the challenges for everyone, because we've got 10 days left, approximately, until the end of the month, which will finish our monthly challenge, but it will also finish our quarterly challenge. So, for the month of March, we have the challenge called You Only Need 10 Models, which is our, essentially, run a demo game. Run a demo or intro game for a new player to Infinity, and write about it. Tell us how you went. Tell us how the new player how you ran your demo event, or your intro game. Have you run them before? Can you give any other players out there who are looking to run demo games some tips, some hints and tips of things to do and not to do? So that's what we want you to do for the next 10 or 11 days of the month. Let us know how you run your intro games, and if you run one, tell us how it went. So as always, send us in your thoughts and your report to us at lostoflieutenant@gmail.com, preferably, or actually no, mandatorily, is that a word? Anyway, as a Google Doc, and a random winner will be chosen at the end of the month to win a blister of their choice from Toy Soldier Imports. Jacob, have you run any demo games lately or intro games?
Define lately. I did have a demo game, or like a reintroduction game, because he said he played like N2, N1, that sort of thing, with a guy, Ben. Another Ben.
We've got so many Bens.
And this was just after, I think it was just after you played. We had BCB, the last one, so obviously a little bit ago.
Have you got any? So, what tips would you offer to a player who's looking to run a demo game? Like any things that you think would work?
Yeah, the obvious one is start small, and I would probably go more for unless they have sort of no idea on how to sort of put armies together or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Start small, 150 points, something like that. Don't. And when you make your army,
would you go 150 points straight up, or like would you do 150 points so long as this person has some in knowledge of tabletop wargaming?
if they've got some knowledge of tabletop wargaming, you can do like the points, and then we'll have a small demo game, that sort of thing. If they've got no idea, then I would do what Peter Henry does and just run like the what's it, Red Veil,
oh yeah,
Crimson Storm, not Crimson Storm.
Crimson
What's the other one
Storm.
called?
Yeah,
No,
Storm.
the Ice.
Sorry. Yeah, Ice Storm. Yeah.
Ice Storm.
Oh, the missions.
Just that sort of scenario, a couple of line troops, something heavy, and just go through just the moving around of troops and the real basic mechanics of Infinity. And then what I like to do is when I build my army is it like obviously don't plan to win. Right, you're running a demo game.
Okay, that's a really good number one demo game tip. Do not play to win.
But play to show off as many mechanics.
As many of the simplest mechanics as you can.
So I remember one game where I was playing Caledonia. And I didn't run anything hugely complicated. I had some camo tokens, I did some melee, I did some smoke, right? And I tried to do like, this is how paramedics work, sort of thing. And that was it. Right? I didn't try to do anything fancy. It was just, I just was like, this is how smoke works because you're going to see smoke. This is how camo works because you're going to see camo. Right, this is how like a little fire team works because you're going to see a fire team. Right, line of sight and all those sorts of things. But yeah, just and pick a simple mission, if they can even if they want to do a mission. Otherwise, like the 4 that they've got, the 4 like simpler missions that they've got, like I don't remember what they're called, the direct action ones.
Yeah.
Right, they're worth it to run. Even they can be a little bit complicated because they've got like their own like Master Breacher-esque sort of rule.
Yeah, well, just strip that back. All you need to do is just have a mission that focuses, that maybe has a button in the middle that you need to push, because that gets people into knowing how to interact with objects. Like you don't need to do that.
If I had to pick one, I'd probably say Supremacy. Right.
Supremacy is not bad.
Wait, does Frontline have the panoplies?
No. I would say Supremacy is probably one of my favorite missions, or a take on Supremacy, because it has movement, it has domination, zone control, button pushing. That all does it. I think I would maybe hesitate in having camo and smoke in someone's first game, even if they were familiar with gaming, because it breaks so much of the game. It's difficult to explain that to a player in the first place. Like the typical one you hear from new players is like, all right, so I discover and then I shoot, and then you're like, you can't do that in ARO. All right, so what do I do? Nothing. And they're like, what? And that can kind of confuse and put players off. Even as cool as camouflage or marker states is to the game, and very important to the game, in the draw, I think if you're new to the game, you might want to be careful about introducing that mechanic. And same with smoke as well, because then you get these arguments about like, hey, I throw smoke at my feet as bullets are flying towards me, and how does that work, and why doesn't? There's all those sorts of like things that you can get you tripped up on.
I haven't done a true like introduction game. The 2 I've done are people who have either played a little bit, COVID happened, and they wanted to play again, or they've played earlier and want to play again. So it's more. So my intro games have more been like, this is how it sort of changed from N3 to N4, that sort of thing.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
But
I mean that counts as well. That counts. If someone's just been in it.
The biggest thing is, don't try and do like the really complicated shit in Infinity. Right.
Yeah.
So,
like arrow forking. This guy.
Yeah, or like I'm running don't run a thing with the peripheral, and if you are, just use it simply, right? Just have them both come around the corner and attack, and he's like, "Oh, I have to make a decision. That's it. Don't like split your fire and try and annihilate an entire fire team or something like that."
Yeah,
Right? Like
yeah.
it's about it's everything should be about teaching.
I think no,
So
I think it's important to teach a player. I just think you have to
yeah,
maybe do it in chunks. Like, an intro game is not maybe the time where I would introduce some of those more complex things.
yeah,
You really just want them learning about the basic
yeah,
mechanics, the arrow, the spending of orders, the simultaneous everything happening at once type things.
yeah.
Have mimetism
It's
-6, and because that teaches you about modifiers, but
yeah,
delaying and camo and stuff like that. I think
and so that
it
was my
depends.
goal. My
Yeah.
my goal was I'm gonna do smoke, camo, the rest of the game. That's it. As in like the basics of the game. That was
Yeah,
it.
and I think hacking has gotten a lot easier since N3 as
Mm,
well. So you can definitely introduce that, and like Code One, I still think is a worthwhile place
yeah.
to drop someone into, especially because it doesn't have some of those. It still has camo, but obviously you can play without camo for the first game if you feel like it would be a bad idea. But anyway, let us know your thoughts because clearly we don't know how to do it. Okay, and
Hmm.
then until the end of the month, we are also running our quarterly challenge, which is called Newly Classified. So we want you to give us some new takes on classified objectives. This can be new classified cards. This can be new ways in which classifieds interact with the game. We'll be talking about one of those missions tonight. Um, but just any way in which you think that classifieds would be more fun. We've received some interesting ideas, and certainly we are very excited about one entrant that we've had. That is, it's a winner. Really, it's really good, and we really can't wait to show it off. Because the person who's done it has done a really fantastic job on it. By the way, yeah. So you got about like 10 or 11 days to get this in. And again, send it into us as a Google Doc to lostlieutenant@gmail.com, and you will go into the draw at the end of this month to win a small box set of your choice from Toy Soldier Imports. What were you
I'm
saying?
thinking of trying to put a classified deck together, not to enter the competition. Can't do that.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't win
But
anyway,
I
but yeah,
just
we want to know.
oh fuck you. Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
even
Because I want to take a look at have a go at making new some new classifieds. Definitely with inspired by our very high effort entrance.
absolutely. Yeah, it's they've done a great job. Okay, so we will move on to news and announcements. So we've had some announcements. Now we know that the what do you call it? What's it called? The Bakunin. The Bakunin
Yeah, the Bakunin
what's it called? Reboot is getting done. So we've been hanging out
revamp, I think is what
for
most people say.
information on that. Revamp, that's the word. We've been hanging out for information on that, and we have been given some of it. So we've already seen a lot of the profiles. Sorry, we've seen the models for the starter set. We have seen the concept art, and we've seen a bunch of other things. But now we have some profiles in our hot little hands, which is really exciting as well. So first of all, we've got on the screen now. They've got the Orphans of the Observance. So they are included in the starter set, and the not starter set. What do you call it? The action pack. And we're just going to quickly go through these. At the time of writing, I think the actual army will update in about like a week, probably less than that by this weekend, because I think Adepticon's this
Yeah,
weekend.
I think
So
it's the Friday of whenever we have. So 24th or something, yeah.
yeah, right. So that's going to be quite exciting. So yeah, so we've got these. This is going to be pretty cool. So do you just want to talk about this starting off then?
Yeah, so
There we
Orphans
go.
of the Observance. A decent profile, BS12, Phys 11, Whip 13, Arm 2, Mimetism -3, Stealth and Religious. Got 4 profiles. It's submachine gun for 14 points. An engineer with submachine gun decharges and gizmo kit for 18 points. An engineer with a repeater, as in like one on her back.
Inside of
Reminiscent
her, yeah.
of, I think the Securitate has one like that,
Oh yeah,
where
true.
they've got a submachine gun, EM mines, decharges for 23 points. That's the profile. I really like that one.
Yep.
And then a MSV2 multi-marksman rifle for 26 points. For me, this is kind of reminiscent of the Cheer Killers, if you remember them.
Yes, no, I was going to say exactly the same thing. Yep, they remind me of cheer killers. Cheap, well, not cheap, but cheap-ish. Troops, slightly specialized. Medium infantry, actually, which is interesting. Little addition, so that helps for some classifieds. But yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, this profile makes a lot of sense when you look at when we'll look at the fire teams.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, mimetism minus three. This is going to be a very heavy mimetism faction. We'll get into that. Yeah, I like the engineer. The MSV2 orphan with the multi marksman rifle is decent because you've got MSV2 mimetism. We're seeing quite a few of these kind of profiles coming out right now. We've seen them in Starmada. We've got Yara Haddad. We've got this lady. We've got Cheer Killers. You know, they're kind of similar, sort of mid 20-point bracket, one wound. You know, armor 2, armor 3, BS 12. But the multi marksman rifle certainly makes her. It gives her the ability to punch above her weight, which is nice. And then EM mines on any profile is a winner for me, so I'm pretty stoked about that.
That little note at the bottom, does that mean that the orphans are only available in Bakunin?
I mean, judging by how it's written right now, yes, because there's no asterisks there to define if there will be a profile
like
that will be in vanilla.
Yeah.
But so it sounds like at the moment these profiles are only in Bakunin, which is great, I think, because it's about time we saw more profiles be sectoral exclusive and not have them packaged into vanilla where they can be kind of optimized out to the point where
it's almost leaning a bit more into the fluff of like the fact that the observance is a little bit like isolated from everyone else.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I mean, this also could be a typo, right? we're not
yeah,
we're not going to say that CB
honest,
haven't just.
As far as I'm concerned, because there's just too many of these notes are only available in Bakunin that for them not to be like related to an asterisk somewhere.
Yeah. All right. So that's the first one. Then we have the Cenobites.
Oh, so excited for these ladies.
Yeah. So these are veteran troops, heavy infantry, impetuous, 6-2 move, CC22, BS11. Otherwise, whip 13, arm 3, BATS 3 with 2 wounds. Mimetism -6, martial arts level 3, immunity shock and religious. So yeah, so far sounding like just sort of cheaper heavy infantry. We've got a chain rifle +1 burst, flash pulse, light shotguns, boarding shotgun, flash pulse, and a heavy rocket launcher light shotgun. They all have DACC weapons, and they've all got heavy pistols. They start at 21 points and end at 27 points. So, yeah, what do you think of these guys? Ladies, sorry.
I want to point out one real big thing on that chain rifle +1 burst profile is the heavy pistol +1 burst.
Yeah. So CC22,
which means it's +1 burst and CC at martial arts level 3.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, and in a fire team, that's burst 4 heavy pistol. That's
yes, it
not
is. That's
bad.
A close range, really nasty.
Yeah.
Like these guys are great. They're very, again, I mean, I don't want to compare it too much. Very reminiscent of the Teutonic Knights.
Yeah, definitely getting Teutonic Knight Tanko vibes here. The difference, the big difference with these girls compared to the Tankos and the Teutonic Knights is they don't have those disposable weapons that those guys have. They don't have Panzerfaust, they don't have Flaming Spears. They do have flash pulses, which gets you out to 24 inches, but other than that, your only other 32-inch weapon is a heavy rocket launcher, and when you're saying BS11, 27 points, and 1.5 SWC, I'm going to say no to that.
Yeah. I mean, they are... I think that's sort of a balancing thing, is for the most part, and their weapons are, and I'm going to put in giant finger quotes, rubbish. right? They're not, but they're not. It's not a HMG. It's not a rocket missile launcher. It's not a multi-rifle, right? It's a chain rifle and flash pulse, couple of shotguns, and even a heavy rocket launcher. As nice as they are, a little bit, as far as heavy weapons go. But again, I look at these profiles, and they are meant. They've been put into the sectorial for a different reason. I think it is bringing something to the reverends, the observance that they haven't really had before, which is a little bit more martial arts.
Oh yeah, okay.
And I think because they're 6'2" and they're S2, these things are going to be a terror when they run around the corner and get into melee and they neg-3 you. Sorry, neg-9 you. To shoot
Yeah,
at them.
if you plan to shoot back, yeah. I am lukewarm on these profiles personally. I think that they're going to be great. They're going to be reasonably good as cheaper link filler, but they're not. They're still 21 points. You're still having to fork out, the cost of a skirmisher on one of these ladies, and they don't really do that much actively. They're defensive pieces for a link team.
Yeah, but when you take a look at, this is current. Obviously, the army changes, and there's been talk about making the Moiras cheaper. But when you take a look at the Moiras right now, where the cheapest profile I think is 29 points, being able to drop at least 2 of them to 21 points is pretty big.
It's fine. It's not Tankos, it's not Teutons, right? Mimetism Neg 6 is an expensive skill. As a Shaz player, I should know because everything's Mimetism -6, and it's a lot squishier than this. The other thing on Mimetism in general that I want to point out is Mimetism is purely it's a fuck you skill, right? It's not a skill that you really leverage actively that often. It's one of those skills where it's there and it's being useful until it's completely not, which is whereas MSV is one of those skills where it's not always going to have an effect, but when it does, it basically it's you use it to the way in which you use it is to remove a problem from your opponent. Mimetism just puts a problem in front of your opponent. And we all know that there's plenty of MSV out there in the world, on even just relatively cheap profiles, that suddenly makes this profile not worth its points. Like MSV, if you're paying 25 points for an MSV trooper, it's fine, right? Because you're either not getting to use it or you're getting to use it, and it's good. Whereas this profile it's like it's there and it's useful, but when it's not useful, you're like, oh fuck, this unit is now I'm now paying points for I should be paying like 5 points less for this model. So I find that Mimetism -6 is useful only insofar as making it slightly harder for your opponent to kill you.
Yeah,
it doesn't really help you. It doesn't really help you actively in the same way as MSV does.
Yeah, I think this is going to be another model that even in, let's say, vanilla Nomads, it's going to be good for one of those missions where you have to hold the middle.
Well,
it's going to be
I don't think you can even take these in vanilla because it says available only for
I'm taking that available only in Bakunin Judicial Command as a really grain of salt.
Yeah. But it's still a decent unit. It leans into this whole mimetism faction that we're going to be encountering with Moiras and whatnot. So but otherwise, decent. The observants are the S5, so the surprise, we're getting an action pack with an S5 model in it. That's been happening for the last 3 years, so it's no surprise that we're getting another one. And this is interesting profile. Mimetism -3, ECM Hacker -3, which features a little bit in this faction that we've seen so far. BTS, it's BS13, 2 wound, armor 5, S5 heavy infantry. You can kind of work out the rest. The weapon loadout is quite interesting though. So we've got the Red Fury Emirat, which is awesome. Red Fury EM grenade launcher +1 burst, which is pretty cool. And then we've got the AP Spitfire, which is, solid, obviously. All of them are 1.5 SWC, ranging from 37 points to 41 points for the Red Fury EM grenade launcher. Now, these will be linkable in a Harris, I believe. So having a Burst 3 EM grenade launcher is quite tasty when you've got Mimetism -3 and BS13. The AP Spitfire is decent. It's 40 points. BS13 with Mimetism is fine.
This is where the Orphan comes into play, because the Orphan can make a pure, not that it really matters for a Harris, but a pure Harris with these guys.
Oh, okay,
So
right.
yeah, they're expensive, but they've got a good cheerleader that's an engineer that can follow them around.
Right, for 16 points or something like that. Right, okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Now I can see that being useful. And it gives you the Burst 5 AP Spitfire, because I was going to say the problem with this profile is it doesn't have any template defense of its own. It just has an AP Spitfire. It just has a Red Fury. Okay, sure, the E-Marat profile is good, although I'm not entirely sure if you're spending 1.5 SWC and 37 points on a Red Fury E-Marat, which is a shame because I do love an E-Marat.
I think if you're taking this profile, you're taking the AP Spitfire or you're taking the Red Fury EM grenade launcher. I can see a reason to take the E-Marat, but I think the other profiles, just that Burst 3 grenade launcher. I mean, what's that? If you fail, it's 6 armor saves.
I'm just not sure that you're going to be taking. I'm just not sure you're going to be using the EM grenade launcher all that much actively. I think you're going to get to a point where you're coming around a corner and you're like, am I Burst 3 EM grenade launcher or Burst 5 Red Fury? Now, sure,
I would against the tag, that EM grenade launcher would be incredible.
Sure, but there's probably other guns that you might want to leverage against a tag, because bear in mind an EM grenade launcher is 0 range bands, so you're shooting it on 10s out to 24.
True.
Right? So you're probably not hitting, and your opponent might not be hitting either because your movement is a -3. Sure, if you hit, that EM grenade launcher is probably shutting that tag down, but it's one of those risky things. What I do quite like is if you have this thing in a Harris, you can have it on a corner watching a fire lane, not a long one, obviously out to 24, and have a Burst 2 EM grenade launcher. Hitting on 10s, still not great. The range bands on the EM grenade on the grenade launcher is just bad enough to not make it worth the points.
You know what? I don't necessarily disagree with you. Now that you mentioned that, look, it's good. Like, it's a good gunfighter. It's relatively immune to hacking. Not really, but it's better. One thing I will point out, it's also kind of slow. It's only 4-4.
Yeah.
Look, I don't think we're not going to see this profile. I think it has a great Harris, and I think it's going to be good enough at shooting that we'll see it.
I think the AP Spitfire is probably the takeaway one from me.
Yeah.
All right. So then we've got the only what do you want, what they called? Not Moira's. What's the word? Is observance, or no? What they called the girl, the nuns,
healer?
the nuns with guns that we're seeing. We haven't seen the actual nuns with guns, but we have got this one, which is Mother Healer Agatha Wabara. Cool looking model, interesting concept, but it'll end up being a lot like things like Gunner, and the other Spec Ops thing that I can't remember the name, where they're just kind of like, yeah, nah, I'll just leave this one at home and I'll take the doctor that's not 42 points.
Yeah. Look, like she's got a nice profile and all that sort of thing. She's just overcosted. That's it. Like she's a good shooter, but with bad guns. She's good at melee, but kind of slow.
Yeah.
And she's got some resilience in like your shock immune dogged, but I feel like it's almost it's. I mean, I get why you give shock immune to a dogged thing, so it can always go dogged, but all that she's really got going for her is that she's a better doctor at the moment than the Reverend Healer.
Okay.
But she's not even 7 points better than the Reverend Healer.
So yeah, so my concern, well, two concerns. One of them is any model that you are paying more than 30 points for and still only has one wound is gotta be really fucking good, and this is not. Second of all, if this is the template for the healers in the new box set, then I am concerned for the rest of the nuns. Because
What do you mean by that?
I mean that if this is the template that we're seeing for healers, as in over 30 points for a doctor with one wound, right? Then we've not fixed the problem with the nuns. Because currently all the nuns are over 30 points, correct me if I'm wrong, or approximately, like all the ones you want to take
mostly,
anyway.
yeah.
Right? Now that doesn't sound like they're changing them that much. Now they have said, Heloise has said online they will be getting cheaper. So that's good. But are they going to be cheap enough to compete with Riot Girls is the big question. That's one thing a lot of Nomad, a lot of Bakunin players are holding out for. They want to run nuns. We love nuns. They think they look great. The fluff is great. They're just cool. But currently, MSV, 2 wound, armor 3, heavy infantry are just better than anything that, outside of Kusanagi, anything that the nuns can do. And looking at her, I'm not like excited. I'm not like, ooh, they've changed them. I'm just like, all right, cool. They're the same.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to hold out hope and say that I think maybe she's a victim of whatever algorithm they got to like calculate points.
Sure.
Or whatever. But you're right. At the very least, she needs to be NWI shock immune. At the very least, for those many points.
Yeah.
Especially because, and I think this is the biggest thing, is that the weapons that they've given her are.
I mean, breaker combi is great. Nothing wrong with breaker combi.
What, 42 points?
No, exactly. Not for 42 points. Not for 42 points on a 4-4 movement platform.
Yeah.
Like, this is the problem. This is the problem with mimetism -6. Like I was saying, like MSV is just cheaper, and you don't feel bad for having it. Sometimes you feel bad for having mimetism because you're just like, fuck, I got templated. Mimetism does nothing. I got hit by an MSV2 trooper. My mimetism does nothing. It's a hard one for factions with mimetism to be worth it. All right.
We'll
plus
see.
one.
Often
plus
these
one
things
burst
happen
medikit.
And then they get balanced pretty quickly.
Plus one burst medikit, on the other hand, is very nice. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the only thing she's really got going for her, and it's not worth 42 points.
No. Okay. Zephyr in the chat is saying MSV is more expensive than mimetism, though. MSV is more expensive than mimetism, but is MSV more expensive than mimetism -6? I would say it's not, judging by these profiles, because we just saw a mimetism -3, MSV2 effective gunfire for 26 points. So I disagree. That it's
cheaper. I would say like the orphan profile would beat this profile.
Yeah, like I say, like you can have mimetism -6. I'm just still butthurt about Jaith cutthroats. like spending 38 points, almost 48 points for an armor 0, 1 wound BS12 Red Fury sucks dick because he's got mimetism -6.
I think someone looked at this profile, looked at the Jaith cutthroats, and thought, but if they get into close combat, they'll fucking destroy. It's like, the problem is getting them there.
Getting them there in a 4-4 movement platform. I mean, she's got arm 3, I guess. Arm 3 is also more expensive.
At least in Bakunin you got smug.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is the coupling. That the other thing about the faction in general is the nuns also are generally armor 3, which is, we know how expensive arm is as well compared to other stats. Okay, so anyway, moving on. Gotta keep moving. So Robin Hook has been announced, and she is a fucking weird profile. I'm all for it. The box art, what you call it, the render, not the render. What's the word I'm thinking of? The dossier is really cool, really interesting. Rogue AI or outlaw AI. Really dig it. The profile, on the other hand, is like it's just the epitome of bloat, isn't it? It's just
it
like
just does my it just does my head in.
it's just so much. I mean, she's cheap. Like she's 23 points for a rifle +1 damage, tactical bow +3, which we're assuming means that it's +3 damage. It could be +3 to her BS,
It
but I
could be
feel like
+3, as in like she is Robin Hook, so she could just be a really good shot with her bow.
she could be, but then her fizz is 10 or 11, which means you're hitting with a damage 11 bow, which then kind of sucks. So because a bow is damaged fizz. So
Yes.
that's why I feel like it'd be damage, because otherwise it's damage 11. At least damage 14 sort of sounds like, oh yeah, yeah, that's okay, I guess.
I mean, it is a tactical bow, so isn't it a DA?
It is DA, yeah, but like the problem is DA if you can't hit for shit is tough.
However,
yeah.
I would also point out that the good range bands for a tactical bow, you may as well use her bloody heavy pistol.
Well, yeah, I was about to say that. She's got heavy pistol +1 burst, which is the same range bands as a tactical. Well, it's not the same range bands, the same good range bands as a tactical bow, and it's damage 14 shock. So I guess you missed out on the double action, but who cares? Power CC weapon 9 is great, except her CC is 13. So yay!
She with -9, she can kind of bring even like a Myrmidon down to her ish level.
Sure,
not really.
Sure, it's fine. Otherwise, like she's got booty, forward deployment +4 inches, ECM hacker -3, immunity total, which is fine. 6-2 move. She's got a built-in repeater, super jump, climbing plus. She's incredibly mobile, which is great. I don't know about this lady. Like at first when I saw her, I thought, yeah, she looks great, and then I kind of looked at her more and was like, yeah. She's not a specialist either, which annoys me. I feel like if this lady was a specialist, I'd be like, yep, okay, 23 points. I could fit that in my list because she's got the mobility to get places, push buttons.
Yeah, she's quick as hell.
She's quick, she's quick, she's forward deploying, she's got total immunity. At the moment now, she just is kind of like a forward deploying repeater that can get places. But then she's hackable, so you're like, I'd rather have an orphan or cheaper. Anyway.
No, dude, she's there, so you run chucks or long arms.
Yeah, sure, yeah. So they did. Actually, we'll get to that. I think this is. Oh no, it's coming up. We'll do it in a second. Anyway, initiated observance. These profiles actually. This is the one profile that was revealed that I was the most surprised and pleased with out of all of them, because it's probably the most not unusual. It's just the most surprising profile. So they're medium infantry as well, which is something I've just noticed. Otherwise, BS12 armor 2, 1 wound. Models with mimetism -3, stealth, and religious, so very similar to the orphans, except these ladies have they've got a parachutist option, which is boarding shotgun, and it can either be killer hacker with D charges or just the boarding shotgun, for 22 points or 25 points for the killer hacker, which is a nice, relatively cheap specialist. Mimetism, boarding shotgun, D charges, decent. And then we've got this other profile, which is camouflage 1 use, infiltration, surprise attack -3, boarding shotgun, or submachine gun deployable repeater for 23 points or 21 points and half in SWC for the deployable repeater option. And in addition to that, the deployable repeater option also has mine layer. So Bakunin are getting Morans, essentially. which is neat. There are only AVA1 according to this screenshot, and they are only available for Bakunin. So again, going on that same thread you talked about, they all seem to be Bakunin only profiles. We'll wait to see if that's true. But what do you think of these?
I think that one you mentioned, the deployable repeater mine layer, I think that is a pretty outstanding profile. It's especially because Bakunin do have really good hackers. They do have a little bit of trouble pushing those hackers out, and that's
Who are their
like the hacker net
hackers?
out. The Reverend Custodia, which is like a Whip 15
Okay, and then
hacker device plus.
and Zoe as well, right?
Yes, Zoe as well, and then
Okay.
you got the moderators.
Because moderators are like Whip 13 BTS3, right? So that's pretty good.
Yeah, and they're very cheap. I think they're hacking device for 14 points.
Okay, yeah. At the moment, current and under the current constitution of the list, we'll find out in a few days'
Yeah.
time when Adepticon kicks off. So I guess we can't.
So
We'll end up having to do all these profiles again, but
so I think this is a good profile. Having only one is a little bit weird. I always find it a bit weird to have anything with combat drop and a shotgun.
Yeah.
Just because it feels like you have to, like the only time you're ever going to use that is in the perfect situation.
Well, you're just getting close enough. Yeah, you're just in that range band where they can template you back, and then you just trade, and it can be bad. It can be a sad time.
Yeah, or you just never get close enough to be in a good range band for the shotgun because there's never an opportunity where something valuable is close to the edge of the board.
Yeah.
Whereas at least the submachine gun has a little bit of reach plus the extra ammo types.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, no, I like it. It's just gonna have to wait until the entire sectorial comes out.
Absolutely. And then finally, we've got the stigmata of the observance. Now, yes, if I said I was surprised in the previous profile, I was utterly shocked at this profile. So we have another tag.
But obvious thing is it is the first hacking tag.
It's a hacker tag.
Killer hacker? Oh no, just
it's a regular. We don't quite know yet, but
yeah,
it's just the a tag. So yeah, this is an S6 tag. It's got a hacking device, carbonite plus 2 damage. The usual assortment of +1 damage, ECM guided, ECM hacker -3. It's armored with a heavy flamethrower, heavy flamethrower +1 burst, or heavy rocket launcher +1 burst with an EMCC weapon. And heavy flamethrower and a heavy rocket launcher. 58 points, and in Bakunin it'll be worth 1.5 SWC. So this is where, you know, we were saying before, where like it was saying like available only for Bakunin jurisdictional command.
I guess you're right.
This one has asterisks on the 1.5 SWC version, so you know it will be available in vanilla, whereas the other ones haven't had that kind of distinction. So we'll see. This one has been talked about extensively. I'm going to say I don't like it. I think this is a bad tag. It's a bad profile. It's and for the reason why I don't like it is a tag is already susceptible to hacking. Now you've just made it susceptible to killer hackers. Good, great, cool. Now this thing can get trinitated by an anathematic. Awesome.
I was saying, because I was talking about it over the weekend, but if you're going to run this tag, and it is going to come out the way that it's that it looks at the moment, is you have to run the Evo bot and put down fairy dust.
Okay. I don't know. I think it's enough of an investment just taking this tag without having to then add the Evo bot just for it.
Well, I mean, you are also running potentially, like if you're running Bakunin, you are running potentially a heavy infantry,
a pain train,
heavy link. So you're not losing out by taking an Evo and dropping fairy dust. You do get some advantages to doing that.
Yeah.
But it's a tag. It's relatively cheap. I think the biggest thing is that normally tags are kind of beat sticks.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're normally there to fight. They generally have a high burst, high damage weapon. This is the first tag that doesn't really get that. I mean,
No.
again, the heavy rocket launcher is nice, but burst 3 is getting risky. I
Yeah.
don't know if it can really take on. Like normally, you can throw a tag out of something that's a good shot, and reliably, um, like either rely on your armor or the fact that you're going to hit it. Because normally you're BS 14. This is BS 13. Its gun it has low-ish burst of only 3. Um, and like you said, it's super vulnerable. It's the only thing in the game that's now vulnerable to every single hacking program,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's
at least aggressive hacking program.
yeah, like it is itself is a good hacker, right? BTS 6, 3 structure, ECM hacker -3, and a hacking device with carbonite +2 damage is a great hacker. Like it's fantastic. It's gonna be difficult to take down. It's going to be able to put out, serious threats to other hackers specific and other tags, right? But is it 58 points of a good hacker? Especially because it can't go prone. It's got a lot of vulnerabilities without an awful lot of defense. Sure, it's CC20, so you can't necessarily run up and just like bonk it with a weapon. But its guns leave a lot to be desired. And yeah,
Carbonite's the isolated one, right?
no, Carbonite's the double action, your immobilized one.
Sorry, I meant the mobilized one.
Yeah,
Like,
immobilized one. So
if that hacking device turns out to be a killer hacking device, I'll be a little bit more into it.
oh yeah, if it's a killer hacker, then I will change my mind. This becomes an anathematic without camo. But yeah, at the moment, I'm intrigued enough about it that I would love to see people run it and see what they can do with it. But on face value, I am unclear as to how this would actually do anything useful.
At the moment, there are too many things that cost like half this thing's points that could run up and just kill it. Right, an intruder would annihilate this thing.
It's an BT, it's ARM 6 model, so an HMG will still have a hard time getting through it. But yeah, I know what you mean. It's not.
Sorry.
Not...
Wait, no, hold on. I said intruder, didn't I?
You did say intruder, yes.
I meant interventor. Sorry.
Oh, okay, right, gotcha. Yeah, you just possess it. You just possess it like you possess every other tag, and then be like, and then use its hacking device on your own friend on your enemy. All right, and then lastly we have the power team chart. We won't spend too long on this because we really we'll get all this out very soon, and we have to move on with the rest of the show. But safe to say, Riot Girls are still here, Taskmasters are still here, Morlocks are still here, right?
Yeah,
so
everyone who
can
was worried like me that the Anarchy side was going to get blown up. It's all still identical.
They're still there.
Nothing that's changed.
Reverend fire teams are still core Harris. They can still be pure because everything's a Reverend. Everything looks pretty much the same. There's some, obviously, the moderators are a little bit different. Things have been added, but nothing's really been taken away, which is good for those people who are concerned.
Yeah, and like I was saying before, the introduction of Cenobites to the Reverend means that team's generally cheaper, and the Observance fire teams does mean that you've got the Orphans, the Cenobites, and the Penitents. They can all go together. They make this nice, relatively cheap Harris, for Bakunin.
Yeah.
So you've got.
I don't think we can use the word
before we see the Moira changes. I can see how they're sort of trying to fix them, making them a bit cheaper, give them a bit more of template defense and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm happy.
I don't know if you can use the word Moiras and cheap in the same sentence. It's gonna be expensive. And again, right, the other thing I'll say on this is the two Moiras that we're getting in the box set are an HMG and a sniper rifle. So it's like if you want to make them a core, then are you making them an aggressive core? And if you are, they're one wound with a mimetism -6. It's a weird push and pull going on there that I'm not. And sure, yeah, the Cenobites will make it a little bit cheaper, and they will give you point defense. They will give you like that close assault capability, but we'll see. We will.
Like,
They might just be in a similar position as MO is.
yeah, I'll send out the brainwaves to CB. Is they just need to give the Moiras shock immune. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure that's. Oh, hopefully that'll happen. All right, we'll move on. So we've got a little bit of we've got some couple more announcements to go through before we go for a quick break. Where were we? Here we are. All right. So we will be talking about this on the weekend. Sorry, tonight. But ANZAC Cup is coming up, 15th and 16th of April. I don't know what the capacity is like at the moment. Maybe Rob can write us in a note and let us know. But there are, I think, 8 of us coming up, or 9 of us maybe now coming up from Melbourne. In April, it's 4 rounds. Missions are Frontline, Sensor Field, Highly Class, or Clighy Hassified, and Rescue. We will be talking about them tonight. Tickets are $25. You get them on Infinity Australia Facebook page, or contact Rob Wright on IA or Discord. And then Burn City Brawl, 5th and 6th of August. Details are still to be forthcoming. It's going to be at Flemington and Kensington Bowls Club in Melbourne. You can find all the details out on Facebook or Discord, or hit me up because I'm one of the TOs. We're still trying to figure out the missions. We will get there soon, but we're just trying to get everything together. Been a bit busy. Anything you wanted to add on to that, Jacob? Are you coming to ANZAC Cup, or are you still not sure yet?
I think, unfortunately, with my ride gone, it's going to be a bit difficult. But
You're right.
I will. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like I was going up with Val and everything.
Right, yeah, because Val's no longer coming.
Yeah.
We will. There are some people driving up because I know we're taking some tables up because we might even be half the attendance, so we're gonna have to bring some tables up to help the local community.
It did seem like that.
So I think Jordan and Tristan are driving up. So there might be some seats. There might not be. Depends on how many tables we take.
Yeah,
we'll find.
I'm just going to quickly shout out, partly because I don't want to do it in the middle of our main discussion. Run by our good friend on Discord, Sprogulator in New South Wales. It's a 3-round tournament called Operation Vine Cutter. It's happening on the 22nd of April at Combat Company in Moordale, Sydney. It's a 3-round tournament. Tickets are $25. There has a 24 player maximum. I'm not going to spoil it at the moment, but it is a custom sort of narrative tournament that I'll talk about later. But the potential missions are capture and protect, unmasking, looting and sabotage, decapitation, biotech 4. Again, it's only 3 rounds. So if you have a chance, you want to go and see something interesting, I'll talk about it a bit later in the episode. Go and check it out.
Cool. And you got the details. We'll put that up in the show notes.
Yeah.
We'll chuck them up in the description for the podcast when it goes up on Spotify later this week. Okay. Well, with that, we will. It's been like over an hour. Damn it! God damn Bakunin stuff taking up all our time when we should be talking about ANZAC missions. Anyway, we will be right back after the short break. And we're back, folks, for the second part of the show, where we're going to go through the ANZAC Cup missions. So there are 4 of them, and like we said before, 2 of them are custom missions. Now, the reason why there's 4 of them and not 5 of them, or 4 of them and not 3 of them, is it is a 2-day event, but it is taking place on Saturday afternoon. So we only got time for 2 rounds on Saturday. The reason for that was to allow people coming down from Sydney and over from Melbourne to be able to drive over. Well, maybe not from Melbourne, but definitely from Sydney can drive down on Saturday morning and make it in time for Saturday afternoon. which also has the added benefit of not having 3 rounds on day one and getting your brain fried. So that's quite nice. But anyway, the reason why we're talking tonight is to talk about these missions. And then after we talk about the missions, we will talk about custom missions in general, because I don't know about you, Jacob, but I feel like in the last 3 years, custom missions have really come to the forefront of competitive play. Prior to that, we'd see them occasionally in narrative events. And
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
before that, you rarely even saw them. You rarely even saw the ITS extras being used. Like even they were just rare. I think.
I
Yeah,
would see Spec Ops, and I would see limited insertion got played a lot. But yeah, you're right. Like it was just it's just this like twist from the norm, and I wanted to talk about it tonight because yeah, like obviously this lineup is a good excuse to talk about them. But it's also not something you see in other game systems, especially not in competitive play. And I would like to talk about why
it very rarely gets past like the local level anywhere else.
And I mean, obviously, this event we're going to is not super hyper competitive, right? It's a charity event, so it's not, But even on other places, and I've heard the guys at Dice Abide, Rose City Raid runs custom missions. Custom missions feature quite heavily in TTS and the IGL. And I guess just wanted to talk about that and see what people's thoughts are on it and my personal thoughts on custom missions. But first, let's get into the missions, shall we? So, I was actually going to bring up the ITS document, but maybe, Jacob, do you want to talk about this while I bring up the ITS document? So the first mission...
Okay,
so what's the first mission of ANZAC Cup?
Yes, the first mission's Frontline, classic. Anyone who's played for any amount of time has probably played it. Simple. The middle of the board is divided up into 3 equal width zones. The objective is just to dominate as many zones as possible with more more points available to you for the zones that you conquer or that you dominate further away from you. This one does have another thing that comes up sometimes, which is the Intel com card, which is you. So in this one, you have 4 classifieds. You can, instead of getting that classified point, you can look at the number on the top of the classified, so 1 to 20, and you can use that card to say, I'm going to put 20 extra points into a particular zone. So I've never used it before. I don't think I've really seen anyone use it to great effect before, but I can see, especially if you have a close game, especially if like Frontline was done last and you're top table, it might be worth it to get those little bit extra points. Has decompression zones, so I don't know how. I know Kev and I are both pretty unimpressed by.
I don't think anyone's impressed with decompression zones. I think
they're just
like
annoying.
Decompression zones to just go away, please. Like,
and you get a defensive turret, which often is just wasting one of your opponent's order, or if you're like me, crits a what's the Ariana tag? The Chernobog? No, the other one, Trip Hammer.
You can do that, yeah.
Crits a Trip Hammer like twice and does 2 wounds to it.
That's handy. Sorry, I'm just trying to get this the fucking thing to fit the screen. There we go, got it. Oh, better get rid of my work stuff from the screen as well.
Not a custom mission, but probably if I was had to say it's an OG mission. It's always good. It doesn't really disadvantage any armies or advantage any armies. There's no like bonuses for hackers, engineers, or anything like that. It's just an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah, so a couple of changes to the mission, like you say, you've gotten all the points there. Is that there are 4 classifieds in this mission, and that is a change from previous seasons, which I guess we probably should have talked about the broader aspects of the mission lineup that we've got. So, but it's difficult to talk about the broader aspects because 2 of them, half missions, are custom missions, which a lot of our listeners won't know. But the lineup here is quite classified heavy because we've got essentially a play on highly classified, and then we've got another mission that has 2 classified objectives in it. So how this one having 4 classifieds, it's essentially highly classified plus domination to it, which really kind of leans away from how Frontline used to be played, which was like kill everything and then on the last turn dominate the zones. Now that tactic will still work, absolutely will still work, but you now have 4 points up for grabs just from doing classifieds, which really kind of balances out the mission of from being just like a pure killing mission to this. You've also got to think about this part of it as well, which I really like.
It means that this mission, like as far as tournament design goes, works in both one where maybe you want the tournament to be a bit more killy, so you're using like decap or firefight.
Yep.
But it also works in ones with like unmasking and the ones that use a lot of specialists, because you've got those 4 classifieds. You're going to want to try and take a doctor, an engineer, a hacker.
Yeah, it's a good mission because it's a good mission because it does pair well with a lot of other missions. Like you don't have to think too much about what list you're building. Obviously there are things that you should consider. So baggage and Shazvasti rules are in this mission because domination is the game. So you want to be considering baggage. So Echidrons, Chaxes, any of your baggage bots, really useful in this mission.
I mean, one now I think about it, wow, is the Maggie.
Magariba, yeah, because she's like 106 points or something like that if she's in a zone at the end of the game. But it's all at the end. It is all at the end of the game. So Magariba guard, great piece. Will she last until the end of the game? Not sure. You mentioned Intelcom, fucking worst rule in the game. Honestly, I just never really like it. Don't really know why it's there, but I mean it is there if you don't want to do secure the HVT, or if you want to basically not do 4 classifieds and just do 3. It is an option because there are 3 other points up for grabs in classifieds, to put the points of your card in the zone.
It's weird because honestly, it's a rule that makes more sense to use when you know your opponent really well. So like if you're playing a friend and know that you might like need those extra points, or he's really good at dominating the zone. Admittedly, if someone says that they're playing Shazvasti, I might consider doing it, because, and for anyone going to this to the ANZAC Cup, do not underestimate how difficult it is to deal with a Shazvasti player on a domination mission. Right, that Shazvasti rule is just killer sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm planning on taking Rama to this event, but it all depends on if I get things painted. Otherwise, I probably will take Shaz. And yeah, the ability to just have Shrouded or Malignos or like they say in the last episode, a Malignos sniper on a rooftop that goes just unconscious outside of your DZ is now a 35-point model that you now can't get to. Is really handy. So yeah, and the other thing about this mission that is interesting is it has retreat, but it does not end in retreat, unlike pretty much every other mission in the game. So it's like no retreat, but worse, because you have to continue to play the rest of the game in retreat, which sucks for you if you are the person who's in retreat. So that kind of lends itself a little bit to just like smashing your opponent, because the problem is if you smash your opponent really, really hard and they go into retreat, but they put whatever they've got left into a zone that you are not dominating, then they could still beat you. Or they do a classified and they're like 1 point up and they beat you. This way, that doesn't happen. You go into retreat, you're like, oh my god, I'm running away, and then you just go, I'll continue to spank you until you're tabled, and we just carry on. So bear that in mind. It's never
the awkward 5 minutes of actually figuring out what the rules of retreat are.
Yeah, true. And a lot of the time it doesn't apply because you've got courage or religious or veteran or whatever.
Exactly.
But it's never come up for me in a game, but it's one thing I always have in the back of my mind. If I am like destroying my opponent, I remember the fact that I don't have to worry about retreat. Oh, I have to worry. Well, I don't have to worry about I don't have to worry about retreat, but my opponent does. So that's an
Yeah.
interesting difference to the mission. So yeah, like that's really all there is much I think to say on Frontline. I guess what would you value in a mission like this? Like the types of units that you might want to take.
I mean, obvious thing, anything with infiltration, forward deploy, take them. Um, things like talking about if going and taking tack. Tack is great for that because the mine layers, the Strelic mine layer, 20 points. It's hugely expensive, but it's not particularly cheap, and they do their job already. They're there to confuse your opponent. Right, they put down a mine, makes them be more cautious, be slower, that sort of thing. But yeah, anything with forward deploy infiltration, um, mine layer, and then
Like
something that can hold its own. I would seriously look at your like whatever your army list is. Find something that was really tough to deal with in suppressive fire, and have that be the piece that you're going to put in your opponent's, if you manage to do it, opponent's like closer to your opponent's DZ at the end of the game when they made you go first.
hmm
Because unless you manage to, make a line of troops in their deployment zone and there's no way of them getting out, that really expensive thing like a hack towel, right, is going to have to, right, is going to have to hold their own.
Okay, yeah. So you can so my earlier point about like you can go pretty hard in this mission, right? If you want to. Um but as you said, you can also reserve your strength until the third turn. So if you are going second, a good tactic may be to have lots of things maybe off the board, AD, hidden deployment, right? Really valuable because you can just be
True.
on turn
Yeah.
3, get into the zones you need to get into. So obviously you want to be defending your own zone primarily, and you take your opponent's zone because if your zone is only worth 1 to you, but it's worth 3 to your opponent. And then the central sector, I think, is probably less of an issue. Like I think if you can dominate your opponent's side of the table and keep yours, that's 4 points, and then it's just a case of like getting a couple of your classified objectives, and you've won.
Yeah.
The center objective can sometimes be a bit of a trap, I think, because you put a lot of effort into there, and that's also where a lot of the fights happen. But if you are going second, for example, you can just if you've got echidrons or some kind of baggage, put it in the closest sector. Your idea
Yeah.
with Strelok is good because they can literally just sit there with themselves and a mine and a decoy. Your opponent doesn't know which one is which, and they'll waste their orders trying to dig one of you out, and you're like, I'm still 20 points, I don't care.
Yeah. And if you're doing that sort of thing, like I would do what I've started to do with tack is don't put your like if you got a mine layer decoy thing, which to be honest is probably only Strelok.
Yeah,
Um,
pretty much.
don't put them so that like they're stretched out in a line. Put them in a little bundle of like in an 8-inch circle, so they don't necessarily know which one's which, right?
Right,
And
yeah.
it's worth putting the Strelok in like the odd, like the weird position.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. And actually, what were you just saying before there? I just had a thought that came to my mind, and it's gone again. It was going to be about obviously dominating the farthest sector from your deployment zone. It's probably the hardest one to take.
Yeah,
It can be, which is the point of us making about dominating the central sector, because if you do put too much material into the central sector, then you leave your own sector potentially vulnerable,
yeah,
which then leans itself a little bit to, if you do end up going first, then often your prerogative there is just kill as much as you can so that they don't have enough resources to stretch themselves between the 3 zones. So they maybe have to just go 2 zones, and then you are then able to capitalize on whatever zone that you want to make sure that you hold. Then just have to be careful about the old, hidden deploy or AD coming on the last turn to ruin your plans.
Yeah.
And I
And
know when
you think
when I build a list for this mission, typically I am looking at going second.
Yeah.
To just capitalize on airborne deployment and hidden deployment. I am worried a little bit about the proliferation of sensor bots in this season. So bear that in mind as well. If you are trying to dominate the central sector, you are closer to somebody who may want to censor you. It's a little bit harder to pinpoint where someone might be because there's no buttons in this mission to kind of narrow the field down as to where you could censor. So it maybe isn't as such a big deal, but it's something to bear in mind as well.
And I think in this mission, tags do have their place, but you're either going to use them to hold your back line because they can still fight from there.
Yes.
Or if they're like a shorter range one with an SMG or something like that.
A tag with an SMG? I don't know any tags with SMGs.
Spitfire.
Spitfire, right, okay. I was like, tag with SMG. Right. I mean, that's a cool weapon, but yeah, no.
Yeah. You are not going to do not try and put them, like, unless it's a desperate last bid, do not put them into your opponent's zone because you're just asking for it to be flanked.
I think your point there about tags is really, really important. Actually, I think this is a decent tag mission. You just move it 4 inches out, move it just an inch out of or 2 inches out of your deployment zone, get it inside your closest zone, use it as an anchor, use it as a 70, 80, whatever point model that your opponent has to get rid of if they want to dominate that zone. Because it's very, very difficult for your opponent to dominate your closest zone if you've got a tag that's alive in it, unless of course they've just absolutely blitzkrieged you and you've got nothing left. The mistake that you would make is when you move that tag from your closest zone to your mid zone. That's where you could come a cropper. Also, it's historically difficult to know where the fucking zones end. So, word to the wise, use your HVT to help you know where that zone starts and ends. So that because it's an 8-inch, it's an 8-inch zone, 8-inch zone, 8-inch zone. So typically we go HVTs go 4 inches out of your deployment zone. And that's usually as far forward as we put them because we don't want them to be too close to the opponent. But in this mission, I would advocate for putting it 8 inches out of your deployment zone. So it's just crossing the...
Yeah, put it perfectly on the line and use it as a marker.
Yeah, and then just remember if it's the front or the back of the base that you put on the line, because I often forget when I'm doing these ones. Yeah. I'm like, shit, did I put the front of the base on the 20-inch line or the back of the base on the 20-inch line? But either way, make a mental or physical note of where you put the HVT so you know where that, because that's the hardest one to get a bearing for.
And the other thing is, and I think we'll move on up to this, but the other thing is if you're going to struggle, like pushing, if you've got your zone, they've got their zone, and you think that you're going to really struggle getting through the middle, right? Take a look at the classifieds, and if you can just do your classifieds, ignore getting the middle back off your opponent, just get those extra points up on the classified objectives. Like don't forget them. There are 4 of them.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and always have that in the back of your mind for sure. All right. What was the next mission?
Let's go through the non-custom missions first, and then
good point. I like
that
back. Idea.
So the very last mission in ANZAC Cup is Rescue.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say
which we just played on the weekend as well. So we have some prior. Maybe
I'm going to say this just for the veteran players is if you remember what Rescue used to be, it was a nightmare. Now it is fine. It's just a mission.
What was it? What was it that made it a nightmare before?
The middle zone was completely difficult terrain, and the old rules for difficult terrain was you used your second movement.
Yeah,
this is back. This is back when medium infantry used to be 4-2, so they would move 2-2.
Yeah, that was bad. That wasn't great. We played this mission on the weekend, and I played it recently as well. I think against Tristan. It might have been. No, it wasn't Tristan. Somebody else. But I like this mission now. I think this is a good mission. it
Yeah,
does lend itself to, I think, just alphaing your opponent to the ground and then spending your last turn grabbing the civies and moving it back. But if you can't do that, I think it's a very good and balanced mission.
yeah, and I think the good balance of that mission is if you are going second, and you are, and you are afraid of that alpha, put yourself in, hide back of your base, sort of thing. Obviously have some watching of the civilians, um, but your opponent has to make a choice. Do I kill my opponent, who's in a really difficult position to get to, or do I grab the civilians? Right.
Mm.
Either way, second turn has sort of an uphill downhill battle, whereas where you just have to make sure you get the civilians at the very end of the game, and you can figure out, you can try and fight your way through. Your opponent, where someone going first has to deal with the fact that if they run up and grab civilians, they're then facing 10 orders or whatever coming back at them.
Yeah, it's like it's much like supplies in that regard. In that, if you null deploy entirely, then your opponent has free reign of the board and can go get the civvies. However, those civvies are only 4 inches out of your deployment zones, so your opponent needs to move further. There's an exclusion zone as well in this mission, so they can't forward deploy in the first place, and then they've got to get them back to a safe zone. And there's no other real objective in this mission except for getting the civilians. So. And because if your opponent's grabbed your own civilians in turn one and only gotten halfway back to their own DZ, your objective's all in front of you. You go past, kill your opponents that's holding your civilians, and then go get theirs. So I quite like it. We'll go through the scoring for it quickly. So because it's a little bit tricky and it can catch people out as well, which is important to note. So it says at the end of the game, so first of all, the deployment is 12-inch deployment, standard deployment. There are 4 civilians in what's called, or there are 4 civilians on the 16-inch line of each deployment zone. They're 12 inches in from the edge and then 8 inches apart from each other, which, if you've ever set up a table for rescue, will know that's really quite difficult to get correct. Because 12 inches plus the 8, if you don't have each civilian spaced exactly correct, you will get this like compression effect where when you get to the last civilian, you're like 5 inches away. You're like, how the fuck did I do that?
Yeah, that's what I kept finding. I just could not get the measurements right.
And they also, from a table building point of view, so shout out Rob Wright, having this as your last mission, fucking make sure that the tables are equipped for rescue, because on the weekend we set up tables on Friday night and we were there till about 10 o'clock at night. And we'd set up this table. I got this Necromunda table from somebody during lockdown. It's a fantastic table. It's just what you think of a Necromunda. It's like walkways everywhere and there's all these buildings and tall towers, and it's really, really cool. It's like all rusted out and everything. It's great. But so I let Phil set up the table, and then I came around later on and we're like, all right, so let's see how this table plays for rescue. And by letter of the law, HVTs have to be placed on ground level. We couldn't do that. It was not possible. Like, we had to move the terrain out of the way, and we were just like, oh, fuck it. This guy's 7 inches away. He's not 8, because we just can't do it. So bear that in mind when you're setting up the table. Because it takes up a lot of real estate, and you end up with this like strip outside your DZ that just has nothing in it. So
unless you've got like a bunch of walls, right? Like there's little like S5, S6 high walls. Yeah, you're gonna have a bad time.
I think TOs can make the call on it whether or not they want them to be on buildings, like maybe in a building or something like that. As long as it's accessible, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
But by the way that you're supposed to set them up, it is tricky. So bear that in mind. So at the end of the game, for each Civivac civilian, so you have the Civivac as a civilian, 1 objective point. Have the same number of civivac civilians in your dead zone. The dead zone is that 4-inch strip outside your DZ. 1 point for that. Have more civivac civilians in your dead zone than your opponent. It's 2 objective points. And at the end of the game, have more civivac civilians in your deployment zone is 3 points. And then there's 1 classified objective. So one thing I want to mention about this straight off the bat is it doesn't matter if you've got 4 civilians, all of them in your DZ, you're not getting 10 points, right? You are getting 8 points because you do not have a civilian in your dead zone. So bear that in mind. Make sure you have a civilian in your dead zone. Or not make sure you have a civilian in your dead zone, but like if you have 2 civilians and they're both in your deployment zone, they're not getting you extra points. You might as well have 1 in your DZ, 1 in your dead zone. That's how you get to 10 points. It seems counterintuitive because you want to have them all in the safest point possible, but remember that. What else about this mission, Jacob?
Corsair.
There is a Corsair in this mission, yeah.
Who is actually, I mean, the Corsair I find has actually been more valuable than I thought it would be. But in this mission, the parachutist profile is actually more valuable than you think. If you need like a last ditch effort to try and get a civilian or something like that, parachuting it into the dead zone, grabbing a civilian, like especially if you're going second, just to grab the civilian and go, I've got more civvies now.
Yeah,
is worth it. The no gravity zone is huge in a mission where speed counts for pretty much everything.
So no gravity
So
zone is the +1.
Yeah. So the low gravity is gives things super jump. This is like
No
train
gravity.
turtle, train 0G, and super jump get +1 inch to their moves.
Yep.
Which is and like I said,
it's
in a
really
game,
useful
in
in
a
a
mission
mobility.
where you've got to run up and run back. Really good.
Yeah, no, we had it in our game on the weekend where I had an Amur who is a specialist, by the way, and in this mission, specialists can grab 2 civilians, which is really useful. And because she's 6'2" with total terrain, she is moving 7'2", which it's only an inch, but when you're moving 7 inches, and then your second half of your order can be like shooting or dodging or whatever, it's super quick. Really gets around.
So well worth it.
And on the rules for Civivac, now we may have already covered this on a previous podcast, I guess, when we went through ITS 14, but for those out there who don't know, Civivac has changed from ITS 13 to ITS 14. In a couple of ways. The main one being that it used to be a case of it would move with you with its own stat line. So, it would move 4 when you moved 4, or when you moved 6, or however far you moved.
Yeah, it was like a 4/4 peripheral essentially.
Yeah, but now they are strapped to you like Baby Yoda or
like a supplies box.
Bran and Hodor, he's just like on your shoulders, just like running around. So you don't have to worry anymore about this model like leaving it behind because you're too fast. It will just be like stuck to you. The only thing you have to make sure is that wherever you end, there's enough space for those silhouettes to go down. So if you've grabbed 2 of them, make sure where you end, there's space to put those 2 S2 markers in base contact with you. You don't want to be like stuck in an area where there's literally no space for them to go. You've got to make sure that's there. The other thing is, in order to civivac in the first place, you have to get into base contact with these civilians and pass a whip +3. A whip +3. If you fail it, I think it goes just a regular whip, because they could become hostile. Yeah. And there are some limitations as to who can civivac a civilian. Now, I got this wrong. Well, I didn't get this wrong. I did not remind my opponent on one of the rounds that they could not use an impetuous model to civivac a civilian, which I felt horrible about, because we got to turn 3 he had Liang Kai in a corner with this the admiral that we were talking about, which is the same rule. And I was coming around the corner, and I was like, right, I'm just gonna shoot Liang Kai, kill him, and then I get the thing, and I win the game. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna move out, and I'm gonna move out enough that I'm taking you out of cover. And then I said to myself, wait a minute though, Liang Kai's impetuous, isn't he? And my opponent Lewis was like, yeah, he is. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. We've gotten 3 turns around this game, forgotten that Liang Kai was impetuous, and you could never have Civivac the bloody Civi in the first place. But anyway, we were where we were, and I shot him twice, hit him twice, and he rolled 2 20s for his armor save, and that was all she wrote. But that's one for Ivory out there. Liang Kai can go suck a dick. That was, so remember that. Impetuous, cannot do it.
The important thing with Impetuous in this, but well, not this season, but in the current shape of N4 is
with bikes.
While most bikes start with Impetuous,
yes,
the new rules allows them to. It specifically says they give up the Impetuous rule.
Yes.
So
yes,
any bike can pick up the thing so long as they get rid of if they get rid of the Impetuous rule with the bike new rule. Do note though that if you frenzy, because I think a couple of the bikes do have frenzy on them, you probably will go Impetuous again, and you can't pick up a civilian if you're Impetuous.
Impetuous, yeah. So definitely, bikes are really good this season, or bikes are really good now in general, because it's now baked into the N4 rules that you can just cancel Impetuous. So, on the weekend I had Carmen and Batard. You've got Jimbo, all these bikers who are 8-4 or 8-6 move, who are perfect in this mission because they've got smoke usually, they've got mimetism, fucking excellent.
The Kuroshi rider would be fucking gross.
Yeah, so really good in this mission as well. As some of our patrons are saying in the chat as well, you cannot Civivac if you're in a fire team, which is also the reason why I didn't think about Liang Kai when we had this game, because Liang Kai was in a duo with a Shaolin monk. And of course, there was no Impetuous to be played at the start of the game because they're in a fire team. So it just didn't click to me that they were Impetuous. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, oh, yeah, go for it, whatever. And then later on, I was like, oh wait, there was an Impetuous order that was like cancelled because it was in a fire team. So remember that as well, kids. Like, if you are Impetuous, you are no longer Impetuous in a fire team, but you cannot Civivac a civilian if you're in a fire team, which then means you have to break the fire team, and then you are now Impetuous again. So,
the best way to think about it is if you have the Impetuous rule.
Yes.
Because, like I said, the bikes specifically say they give up the rule. The other thing is, if you have the peripheral rule, you cannot pick up the civilian, which means anything that's like Oxbots and stuff can't do it, but the dude with that's like the controller, they can still pick them up because they don't have the peripheral rule.
Yeah, and then your example with antipodes, they can't either because they are peripherals, right?
Yeah. So like, even something that's not a Rem, because Rem can't pick them up either.
Rems can't pick them up either. So puppet bots, for example,
players have a sook.
Yeah. So actually, are puppet bots Rems as well? Are they just like little little infantry things?
I mean, I don't know. I'll look it up right now.
But either way, even if they weren't Rems, they couldn't, because puppet bots are peripherals as well. So that's another thing you can't do, which is important to note. But it's just funny, because if you are a doctor with a Nazmat, the doctor can, but the Nazmat cannot. You also can't be part of a coordinated order either to pick up a civilian. So bear that in mind. It is important, and it was important for me in my game when I didn't realize it. The Ankai was like whoop 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 with his the admiral. I was like, you can't do that. He's like, I don't give fuck you. I'm like, oh, okay, too late. So yeah, rescue. Sorry.
He's just cartwheeling his way down the corridor, making the admiral throw up.
Yeah. So what else was there on rescue? So things to bear in mind, things to value in rescue. Uh, Again, yeah, mobility is huge, really important in this mission. I would be looking at motorcycles, anything with six-inch movement. Unfortunately, a lot of things with 6-inch movement are remotes, so not your sensor bot. Unfortunately, this game. But anything else with 6-inch move, I was talking about Nemuras earlier on. They're excellent because they are specialists with 6-2 move and climbing plus. So on the civilian part of things, if you sink a civilian and you've got climbing plus, hey, so do they now because they're on your shoulders and you're just moving up a building with them attached to you.
And an incredible one, because I think their 6-6 move now I think about it, is the oh, why can't I think of it? What's the Sphinx?
The Sphinx, yeah, because it is not a remote; it is a tag,
The
so it
tag.
can
So
it can do
again,
it.
we were talking about tags for frontline, tags for rescue. Right, they're
Yeah,
quick, they're tough. I mean, if well, no, I was gonna say if you're the Maggie, you can pick up an extra civilian, but you can't. That's
no, because
supply
she's
that you can
not.
pick up an
Yeah,
extra
she's
box.
not baggage. Yeah. Um.
So they're well worth it.
Okay. Right. So the thing I was just looking at, and I think it's okay, is you let's just say you've got climbing plus. Let's just say you're a Sphinx and you've grabbed a civilian and you're like going vertically up a building. I was just making
Yeah.
sure that you can finish a move on a vertical surface. Because there is a rule here that says, looking at the rules here, it says, when the civivac is cancelled, the civilian must be left on a horizontal surface. Okay, it's just when it's cancelled. It doesn't mean that
Yeah,
you
which
have
means
to.
you just drop
Yeah.
it on the ground.
Well, no, I don't know if. Well, yes, okay, true, yeah, fair enough. I think that what that's trying to avoid is you climbing plus up a wall, then voluntarily cancel the civivac state. Is you cannot do that. You can't voluntarily cancel the civivac state because then that would leave the civilian on an inaccessible surface to most things. I think that's what it's getting at. I don't think it drops down. Maybe or unless you die. The problem is if you go unconscious on a wall, that might be more harder to do. But I just think that's there because it's to stop a player from being a dickhead.
Yeah, because if you read the rules that they have in RTS, the dot point immediately prior to it is about cancelling the civivac state. So I think it's both for the fact of where do I put the civilian if I get shot on a wall, as well as if I cancel it, I can't like put him weirdly on this wall, like
Yeah,
I'm like hanging him up to eat him later,
yeah, yeah. Like the predator.
like you're
Um,
hiding it from a bear. You're just
yeah,
putting it up in the tree.
just squirreling it away.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a good point. Yeah. So, what else would you value? So, tags might be okay in this one because they're durable,
I,
they're
I, I,
fast.
I think speed, and I
Mm,
think as I was mentioning before, because we were talking about it in TAC, could have solved a lot of my problems in that tournament with a Spetnaz parachutist. Anything with parachutist or
yeah.
combat jump that can drop into that dead zone and potentially grab
I think combat jump
one of them.
is good. A parachutist I'd be wary of because it's very table dependent. Like you've got a 4-inch. Oh, excuse me. You've got a 4-inch strip to drop in on that could be completely in the open, or could be completely sealed off by a piece of terrain, and you will not be able to walk on. I've had tables before where I've gone, hey, we're playing an exclusion zone, and on the table I'm playing on, both sides of my opponent's side are completely blocked off by pieces of terrain, and I simply cannot walk anything on. And the TO has just gone, well, tough shit, like you've taken the wrong list, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I guess
I
fair enough.
think I think admittedly rescue for Ariadna does have them pushing finding uphill a little bit, because their main advantage with like the forward deployment and mimetism sort of goes away, and because they don't have the robots or like the weird heavy infantries or anything, their fast units tend to either be impetuous, in the case of like the bear or the dog warrior, or they tend to be peripherals in the case of the other bear or the antipodes. So you're really relying on your bikes, which are kind of squishy.
Yeah, they're squishy, but all your bears and stuff, they're just there to eat everything else. Now, on that, we talked about mobility and things you might use to get the civilians. Also, it's really important in this mission is our defensive measures. So, because the civilians are only 4 inches out of your deployment zone, hackers, very useful, because they will be in zone of control to spotlight or whatever if someone comes and gets them, because they will have to break stealth in order to do the skill. So you've got repeaters, on the midline or even outside of your deployment zone. They can just sit there and wait for something to come closer. Things like warbands, morlocks, taigas, mutts. TR bots are useful because they can potentially cover multiple civilians in one go. One of the Nick who ran Rama on the weekend says he got a lot of value out of the baggage bot TR, the rifle light shotgun.
Oh, the combi rifle one.
Yeah, well, in Hagazam, it's the rifle light shotgun, and he was like, "Well, it was perfect because he could just put it there. It would be in good range. It's armor 2 in cover, right? So it's armor 5 in cover, right? It's got a rifle and it's got a light shotgun, and it's just able to cover those angles of attack."
A really mean one is the combined army total reaction plasma rifle.
Yes, actually, I was looking at that the other day, going, that's really quite spicy. So yeah, any of those kind of units, I find when I've played Shaz before, things like Taigas are really useful because they've got 6th sense. Although, not arguably, I think the rules are that they can't use 6th sense because they're not being targeted by an attack. But anyway, they've got high fizz, so they can dodge 4 inches. That will put them in a position where when you
they're also a 6-point chain call that you can just slap up against the civilian with their impetuous orders, and they're good to defend there.
Yeah, so very good at defending. So that close in. So like you might be thinking about like long range arrows, sniper rifles, missile launchers, that sort of thing. But in this mission, close in support is really important too. Chain rifles, repeaters, flamethrowers, Gazzies with jammers. Anything with jammers, fuck, that's so good too, right? Because you just go, hey, I'm going to sink the civilian. Cool, I'm going to jam you. Because if you just go ahead and grab the civilian and you get jammed, now you're stuck there. And if you reset, then you've got to try it again next time. So that's another really important thing to consider as well.
Custom missions.
Okay, let's move on. Let's go into custom missions. So where are we? Stop the sharing. Okay, so I'm going to find custom missions. I did bring one up before. Oh God. Here we are. Where did it go? Oh, I'm so good at this. I'm so fucking good at this game. Every time I try and get this thing to work, it just goes no. Oh, okay. I see. I have to make this a new tab. All right, sorry, this is great radio. There we go. All right. Sensor field. Oh, whoa. There we go. All right. Sensor field. Okay, so this is one of the 2 custom missions for the weekend. I'm going to try and get into a position where people can read it. All right. This is a very unusual mission, and we will have a few things to say about it, I think. Not all bad. Don't worry. Not all bad.
No, I thought it was a good mission.
Okay, I'm glad you did. Okay, so this is a standard 12-inch deployment zone. No objectives or anything in the middle. But So the mission objectives are: at the end of a turn, have only friendly multi-scanners in a zone of operations in the opponent's half of the table. 1 objective point. Each zone can only be scored once per game. I don't know if we should get into this now or after we've done the breakdown, but we'll just go through everything and then we'll go back to this. At the end of each game round, have a multi-scanner in more zone of operations than your opponent, 2 objective points. At the end of each game round, have a multi-scanner in the same number of areas as your opponent, 1 objective point. And then you have 2 classified objectives. So, we'll talk about zone of operations first. So the map is split into something similar to Frontline. Not Frontline.
It's actually similar to Rescue and Quadrant Control.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. So it's split into quadrants, but you don't include the 4 inches outside your deployment zone. So if you imagine that it's an exclusion zone, and that exclusion zone is then quartered. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 quadrants in that 16-inch by 48-inch rectangle. Those are your 4 zones of operations. And those are the 4 zones you got to drop multi-scanners in. So how do you drop multi-scanners? Well, great question. You drop multi-scanners by spending an order. So you do a thing called place multi-scanner. And it says only specialist troops can declare the skill. This skill cannot be declared as part of a coordinated order. And you have to have placed fewer than 8 multi-scanners throughout the game so far. So if you've done all those, you can roll a dice for a whip check to allow you to place a multi-scanner token on the game table. The trooper and then you can place it like in silhouette contact or anywhere along your movement path in the usual way that you would place any other deployable. Although it is not the place deployable skill, so it cannot be combined with any other. It cannot be combined with Mine Layer, for example. The token must be fully supported on the surface it's placed on, and importantly, and this actually for Rob should probably be in bold and with like neon lights around it, and cannot be placed in a scenery item or building other than an objective room. Although I'm not quite sure why it says that because this mission has no objective room. But anyway, on or touching any scenery item or building, and it will never gain a benefit from partial cover. 2 very important points there. So these things are placed much in the same way as you would in HVT, in that they had to be placed on ground level, and they cannot benefit from partial cover. The token is placed at the conclusion of the order, yada yada. The token is considered allied to the player who placed it and hostile to their opponents, and a multi-scanner has no line of fire and does not prevent cautious movement or a trooper from re-entering marker state, which is just, he's added that in because some idiot asked it on the forums and it became an FAQ. That's why it's there, because no one's ever suggesting that multi-scanner would prevent you from entering marker state, but I'm glad it's there because I'm sure someone would ask it but wasn't. A multi-scanner has been deployed on the battlefield will remain in play until the end of the game or until it is destroyed. So how do we destroy these things? They are Arm 0, BTS 0, 2 structure, Silhouette 1, and can be gizmo kitted on a Fizz of 9. And they can also be repaired by an engineer. Multi-scanners are immediately destroyed when their structure is reduced to 0. And a multi-scanner is inside a zone of operations when it's in contact with the zone or is at least partially within the zone. If the multi-scanner is inside 2 zones, then it's only counted as being inside the one it is, like the majority is inside of, right? Are you following me so far, Jacob?
Yeah.
Okay, good. There's a specialist bonus in this mission, Chain of Command or Engineer. Quite like this because it's not hackers, basically. So engineers and Chain of Command get a +3 and 2 dice rolls to their whip check, which is nice. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We'll go back to the main objectives because I want to touch on this first bullet point here. At the end of a turn. Jacob, what's a turn?
So the turn is when you would give play to your opponent.
Okay. And that's different from a round?
So a round is when the
sorry,
person
make
who is
this
going
bigger.
second finishes their turn.
Okay. I just realized this has not been. I've not enlarged this fucking
So
screen this entire time.
if you take a look at the order of play in your N4 rule book, it does specify the difference between turns and rounds. So the turn is when you've done all of your orders, and you pass play on to your opponent. That's the end of your turn. A round is when both people have had their turns, right? And it goes back to the first player or the second player finishes their turn. However you want to do it.
Yeah.
Describe it, I should say.
So, yeah, am I back on? Yes, I am. So yeah, this is a unique objective in that it is scored at the end of a turn. Now what I see as the reason for this is often players who go first have the objective to just smash your opponent into dust. Having this objective here gives your opponent, or gives the person who's going first, the option to cross the midline, place a scanner in each zone, and immediately score 2 points that cannot be contested.
Yeah.
Because it says each zone can only be scored once per game, and once they're down there, at the end of your turn, you score it. And your opponent has no recourse to destroy them because it's the end of the turn. Or end of a turn, yeah. And this also means that if you go second, it's a bit harder because the person who goes first can also place a couple of scanners in their own zones, which then means if you are going second and you go into the furthest away zone, not only do you have to place one or two in your opponent's half, you also have to destroy the one or two that your opponent's placed. So it kind of gives a little bit of options to a person who goes first,
Yeah.
on rather than just killing.
And I think, I know in my game, the fact that these things have 2 wounds.
Oh,
right,
fuck. We'll get into that.
Right, was a fucking nightmare.
We'll fucking get into that.
What it means is if you go first and you put down 4 scanners, more than likely the person who is going second has to kill the scanners that you put in his zone, more than likely, but then also has to kill the scanners in your zones to then get those 2 points that you've already got. And because they have 2 wounds, unless you're firing something with like DA or something like that, you're going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to probably put the entire burst into them, especially if you get like a burst 3 or something like that.
Burst 3 is
going
like a
to
burst 3
waste...
combi rifle is going to be tricky if you're going to get it off or not. It's not guaranteed in one order.
It's going to be like even a multi-rifle, which is generally a good weapon against people, is garbage against this because you can't shock it because it's... I suppose technically you can shock it. It's not shock immune.
Okay, that's a good point. Rob, if you're listening, make them shock immune. Thank you.
No, don't make it. But yeah, assuming that like AP doesn't work, like breaker doesn't matter, like half of the ammos don't matter.
Like, well, I mean, it doesn't matter because they're arm 0, BTS 0, and can't take cover.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is nothing matters except for like DA or explosive, but it's take out your entire burst. So more than likely,
T2,
you can do that if you put 4 things down. You score 2 points, and you can almost guarantee that either your opponent's going to be down points, or you are going, to waste 4 orders of theirs.
Yeah, what I like about this mission. We did mention there are 2 classified objectives as well, right? So what I like about this mission is there is this, again, there's like this push and pull of shit. Do I attack my opponent or do I just place multi scanners? And then the second player is like, shit. Do I attack my opponent? Do I place multi scanners or do I try to destroy their multi scanners? And how much of those can I do effectively in one turn? Which is also the thing I like least about this mission, in that it does give you those options, and sometimes your only option is just to place more scanners. And we found this out on the weekend. Callum and I had a game, and I finished the game with 295 points left on the table because all we did all game was just place multi-scanners and
Wait, does
nothing
that mean
else.
the only thing he killed was a mutt?
He killed Batard.
Oh, he killed Batard.
Because his prerogative was just to place multi-scanners, and so was mine. I mean, I killed more of his stuff, but it was one of those games where it was just a bit of a boring match. Normally, I like matches which are like less about killing, but this felt very, and it was also the table that made it a problem, which I'll get into this a bit of a gripe I have about this mission. Because you have to place everything on the ground floor, it becomes very dependent on the table. So the table that we played on the weekend had this big old building. I think it's Tristan's table. So shout out to Tristan. That took up like a large part of the center of the table.
Oh, that's a Brutal Cities one, isn't it?
No, it's
Okay.
the I don't know, like I can't habitat buildings, like like the little low habitat things,
gotcha.
the blue and white ones. Because there was like a whole bunch of those buildings all pushed together in the middle, it created this like square or rectangle of like you can't place a multi-scanner here, and it was also angled in a kind of diamond shape, which meant that your only places you could put them in your opponent's half of the table meant that you had to kind of come like at a diamond, like out to the edges of the diamond, which was also conveniently where my link team and his tag were placed in the middle. So we were just watching the sides from each angle, and we were just like, fuck, okay, I guess I throw smoke, I move up, I put a thing in your half, but now I'm exposed, and I have to spend my remaining orders to just pull all the way back to my DZ, and now it's your turn. And that was kind of what happened throughout the entire game. Now, that is more table dependent than the actual mission, and I'm not necessarily saying it's a criticism, but had we been able to put them on the buildings, it would have made for a much more dynamic and fun mission.
And I think like if you take a look at like the size of the silhouette of the scanners, they're S1. Which I know you mentioned was something of a surprise to you because you thought they were S0 like a mine.
I did, yes. Well, yes, so, that's true.
And I think the reason why he's put that rule there is so that you can't put them in like I mean, it doesn't really matter because you can already put them in really weird spots, but you can't put them in a super weird spot and have them S1 behind a parapet. You could never see it unless you go all the way around. If Rob wanted to fix that, just make them S2.
Well, I don't think you need to make the S2 because most of the time S1 is still taller than the majority of parapets out there.
I mean, I've seen plenty of. It's neither here nor there. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. It just depends.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with the mission. It's good and it's also bad because also shout out to our local Millie. She made she 3D printed me 8 S1 tokens that I was able to use on the weekend to put down and actually physically have the correct volume for the multi scanners, because a lot of people are just putting down the flat discs, right? Because they don't have S1 tokens handy. And that makes it a lot harder to visualize where the fuck it is and whether or not you can see it, right? So having the S1 was really useful because it actually gives you a visualization of like, can I see that thing? Can I shoot it? Yes, right. I'll shoot it. So that's, I guess, another point about this mission, which is, again, I'm not going to say it's a criticism. It's just something that is people need to be very aware of. So we've already got a mission that has a scoring mechanic that is unique to any other mission in the game, and the end of turn scoring. We have multi-scanners which do not obey the laws of deployables in any way at all, in that they are S1, when I think every other deployable is S0, except for, sure, like Crazy Koalas are S1, Mad Traps are S1. But these are S1. They also cannot take cover like every other thing in the game. And on top of that, they also have to be placed as if they are an HVT. Now, I noted on the weekend after we finished the tournament, I was asking everyone, what they thought of the day. Did they like the missions? Didn't they like the missions? Now, I think I would say most people said that they enjoyed Sensor Field, but a lot of them then sort of were like unsure if they enjoyed it or not once I reminded them about the rules of the mission, because the majority of people got it wrong. They either thought that they were S0, thought that they could be placed anywhere, thought that they could take cover, and didn't understand how the end of turn scoring thing worked. Now, I'm not saying they did all those 4 things at the same time, but every player I spoke to got at least one of those 4 points wrong. Now, that's also the first time they played the mission, right? So sometimes it's the first time they played the mission, so that's totally forgivable. Everyone gets missions wrong. But I just wonder, introducing so many unique changes to the game in one mission means that you're gonna get things wrong.
It's the same as cryogenics. It's the growing pains of a new mission.
Yeah.
Where people start to sort of figure out what it means and come to a consensus on how to do things.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying it's a criticism of it. I'm just saying it's a thing that has caught me out, and it's caught a few. And actually, I played the mission like completely correct, but the table fucked us. Me and my opponent and I didn't have as good a game as I think we could have done had we been able to place them on rooftops, right? Because the fact that they can't, the fact that they can't claim cover, and the fact that they were taller than most of the things on the map would have meant that had we placed them on a rooftop, it wouldn't actually have mattered, and it probably would have made for a more interesting game. But conversely, had we played that game on my Brutal Cities table that has like 9-inch tall buildings, then arguably maybe that wouldn't have been such a good game. I don't know. It's kind of, it's a tough one.
Just scroll down to it for a second. Okay. I would actually ask Rob whether the multi-scanners are a piece of equipment, because I was just taking a look, because I remember this. It's only ever happened to me once. Do you remember Minesweepers?
Yeah.
Well, they still exist in the game, but they're called deactivators now.
Oh, right. So if you can deactivate them.
Well, I don't know. It's only for a deployable or a piece of equipment.
Okay, Rob, can you use deactivator to effectively remove them from the game? That's actually kind of interesting. That would make deactivator really interesting,
and it would actually mesh really well with this season, because what do all the forward deployer repeater bots have? Deactivators.
Oh, you could just deactivate them within 8 inches. All you need to do is roll the hit, and they are turned off. So you bypass the 2 structure. They've got no armor anyway, but you bypass the 2. Oh, that's actually pretty interesting. Yeah, that would be a good, like, it's not like a brilliant way of getting rid of them. Like, it's no better than just shooting it with a combi rifle. But on models that have deactivator, it becomes like an interesting option. Okay, no, I like that one. Anyway,
the main thing is it doesn't give your opponent the chance to do what happened with me, where I put 2 chain rifles onto them and they passed both the armor saves.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, there's no armor saves against it. We'll have to move on, but what we will do, and we haven't really done yet, is like, what do you value in a mission like this, and what do you, like, how would you sort of attack and defend into this mission?
Templates are good. I know I just mentioned that I got like orders sucked up by invincible multi-scanners, but the templates are good. They will mean that you don't have to like try and hit and then you whiff on the hit rolls, and you only hit them once, so you can't do enough wounds.
Yep.
So anything with like a burst 2 template, quick engineers or engineers that you're going to move. So like the Hoplite engineer right? Who's going to do a lot of
Fiddler
fighting.
is really good for this one.
Yep. The
Not,
Evader.
not only because of Fiddler, because she's an engineer, but her jackbots are incredibly good at getting rid of those things. Because
Yeah.
burst two continuous damage will just clear those things out.
Oh, yeah, real nice.
Yeah.
But the good thing about this mission is, I would say, I'd probably value some of those specialist operative profiles, because often you find that they're more on the fighty end.
Okay.
And if they've got enough wit, you're probably going to be able to use them to do this mission and do the fighting and get rid of objectives.
Gunfighting specialists, things that can get up the table, gunfight,
Yeah.
place a thing.
So a good example of that, that's a little bit more left field, is Thrasymedes, I think his name is,
Okay.
the Thrakitai sergeant. That's not Alki.
Oh,
Right.
I don't know.
He's got an SMG light rocket launcher, right? And ODD. He's got 3 armor, so he's pretty tough. But he's also a specialist operative, so he's giving you everything that you need to do this mission.
Okay. Yep. I see that.
The other thing is, especially if you're going first, infiltrating specialist.
Yeah, I think infiltrating specialist very important in this mission because you are already in the zone. You may only have to spend a single order to get into your opponent's half of the table and place a multi-scanner, which is huge. I'm building a Shaz list right now for this event in case I don't get my Rama painted, and I'm looking at Caliban Chain of Command and Caliban Engineer. Now they've only got 4 deployment plus 8. They're not at the halfway line, but they are up the table. And they both get bonuses, so they're both 2016s. I'm like, oh wow, that's really good.
Very good. Both are very good fighters up close.
Yeah, so both of those things like that. I'm thinking in Rama, I was running the Namur, right? So again, very very mobile, decent whip, good at
Ermandino.
Actually, Ermandinos are freaking good in this one because impetuous. Whip 13, so the 2016s placing a multi-scanner, just like
should
boop,
point out
boop,
you can't put this thing down as part of the impetuous order, but whatever.
That's true. You can't do it as part of impetuous. That's a good point. Yep. Those sorts of things. What else? I feel like you want to be putting the emphasis on placing them than destroying them, because it doesn't matter how many your opponent. It doesn't matter how many your opponent has placed in a single zone. You just have to place more end zones. Like, sorry, you have to have more zones.
It matters for that end of turn one.
It matters for the end of turn one, but if you're just looking at who wins the round, if you've got like 4 in one zone and 1 in the other, and then 1 in my zone or whatever, and I have placed 4, 1 in each zone, then win. I get 2 points for having more. I don't have to. It does matter. You're right for the end of turn scoring, but I think that is once the game gets going. I feel like that's less relevant.
Yeah, I think the best thing to do in this
and also harder to do
is put a sensor in each of the quadrants, and then play reactively. So if your opponent, if you're going first, you get all 4 quadrants controlled, right? Your opponent who's going second has the uphill battle. You then go, okay, he killed 1 in that quadrant. I'll go put 2 in that quadrant, and then he killed 1 in that quadrant. I'll put 2 in that quadrant. Just react to what your opponent's doing if you're going first.
Well, if you're going first, it's kind of irrelevant though, because because like I was gonna say this mission is it does seem to favor going second. More okay, sure, you get that bonus going first. You get to place things on your opponent's side. I think after that point, all about going second, baby, because you just have to go. Oh, you've got 1 there. Cool. I'll put 1 there. Now you don't get now. None of us get that zone. I just have to find where you haven't put 1. And if you put 1 somewhere and everywhere, then I'll just have to kill that 1. Get it there.
Yeah,
I now get the 2 points. I think there is a real advantage in going second in this one. And because it doesn't lend itself to alpha striking, because if you alpha strike and you fail, then you may be in a bad time, because you've got all these other things you want to do. Then I think it also disincentivizes going first.
Yeah.
So, but otherwise, I think I like it. I didn't have a great time of it on the weekend, and I've only played it once before, where I played it wrong. So I don't have a great, basis for this mission. I'm looking forward to playing it in not CanCon, ANZAC Cup in Canberra. And I'm looking forward to seeing, how people play it. But yeah, it is an interesting mission, and I can see what the author is trying to do with this mission. Emphasizing doing other things and killing people on turn one, or sorry, first turn, going first. There's a lot of other things you can be doing in this mission than just killing, and it does seem to be like if you just kill things but don't kill or place your own multi scanners, then you lose. Like there's really no two ways about it. If you're only hellbent on killing, you're gonna lose, unless you absolutely smash your opponent's specialists on turn one. Like that's the only way. But I don't think your opponent will generally have options to get around that. So okay, that mission is done. We will look at another mission, which is called. Let's see if I can spell it. Oh no.
Clighy Hassified.
Clighy. Oh god. Clighy Hats. Oh fuck. No, it's not coming up. Hang on. Here we go. I'll go into here. It's in here. Don't look at my weird things I've been doing in this. Where is it? Oh, it's not here. God damn it. I am such an idiot. All right. While we talk about the last mission, I'll try to find it. I don't know why it's not there. It'll be in our show notes, won't it? That's why I'll get in the show notes. There we go. All right. There we go. Okay. So this mission is a take on highly classified, and it is, I think, a better version of highly classified, if I'm honest. And it's better. Oh god. Sorry, I'm still trying to figure out what's going on here with this screen. Here we go. Right. And it is better because you get to choose your classifieds. Right? Have you played this mission yet?
No, I've been meaning to. Just haven't had a chance with Thunder over Helheim coming out. But maybe I'll get a chance this week.
Yeah, I thought about including it in the mission lineup on the weekend, but I really wanted to try my Secure the Admiral custom mission, which I've been working on, and I was really excited about it. And by all accounts, people seem to enjoy it, which I guess we might, do an episode on that one at some point. But this one, so it is a semi-original mission by Inane Imp, otherwise known as Rob Wright, not Rob Cantrell, just in case you're wondering. With apologies to Corvus Billy and William Archibald Spooner. Right. So mission objectives, Mr. Jacob, you go ahead.
So it's very similar to highly classified at the end of the game. Have accomplished more main classified objectives than the adversary at the end of the game. Have completed the same number of main classified objectives, and then 1 point for each accomplished main classified objectives. You then get 1 point for every secondary classified objectives, of which you have. Oh, sorry, which is worth. You only have one, but it is worth 3 points.
3 points, yeah.
Sorry, I thought it was 3 each worth a point.
Yeah.
So the big difference between this and normal highly classified. With normally highly classified, you each sort of draw 2 randomly, like you normally would.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and this one, after you do the initiative roll, you can make a decision of whether you're keeping initiative or deployment or what have you. You look at your deck freely and you pick out 2 classifieds that you want to do.
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, isn't there a rule for if you get doubles?
No, so that's changed. So the original version of this mission worked in the same way, but if you basically it's changed now, where now the draw is done after initiative roll, which is different from how classifieds are normally chosen. Normally you choose them first, then you choose your list, then you roll initiative. This mission is you choose your list, you roll initiative, then you choose your classifieds. And the reason for that is so that people are incentivized to take some of the end of game scoring objectives if you're going second. So like capture, rescue, those kinds of ones. That's why it's there.
But it also means that, like, I suppose, I mean, there is some fun in the randomness of classifieds, but in this particular case, in this particular case, it's like you still have onus on what classifieds you want to do, at least two of them. To the point where you can sort of design your list around completing those objectives.
That's right. Yeah, you can do that.
We were talking about more of the Bakunin before. You probably would take, I think, follow-up is the one that can be done by medium infantry.
Yes.
Yeah. So you'd be like, okay, I can take follow-up. All my dudes are medium infantry. Makes it a lot easier for me to complete. What I was talking about before was it used to be if you picked up doubles, that objective was worth, you would get rid of one, but that objective would be worth two.
Yeah, so the order has changed a little bit, where if you would, whereas before you would both draw two and then you would reveal them, and if two of them were the same, then that would become the red deck classified. Whereas they've changed this now, and now you just go, players choose classifieds by freely selecting them from their classified deck. The player who won the initiative roll chooses who will select first, and players will then select classifieds one at a time in succession until 4 different main classifieds have been selected. They must be different. So what this allows you to do is build a list with 4 classifieds in mind, right? Because what will happen is, like, let's just say I'm building my list and I'm like, all right, okay, well, I'll take Extreme Prejudice, I'll take Data Scan, I'll take Net Undermine, and Sabotage. Right, those are the 4 that I've got in mind. That's how I've built my list. If my opponent plays Sabotage, then cool. I've still got 3 others that I can choose from. But then there is a bit of counterplay in this mission, which I quite like, because if I go up against, I don't know, Nomads, for example, and I'm like expecting hacking heavy, then maybe I will change my mind and I will not take Data Scan. Maybe I'll go for, I don't know, Paramedic, like the HVT Paramedic one, because I'm playing Hack Islam and I've got a gazillion doctors. So there's a little bit of that going on in this mission, which is really fun and interesting and kind of makes you think on your feet a little bit about, like, I was going to go for this mission, but you've chosen it because you're running X army. Maybe you're playing Ariadna, right? You know, like, oh, you got fuck all hackers, so I'll play 2 hacking classifieds just to make your life harder.
If you're say MO versus Steel Phalanx, right? One of the players might be like, okay, maybe I don't want to do Predator because I could play into their hands.
Yeah, or the heavy infantry one. Maybe you want to make it harder for them. You know, like, oh, they've got heavy infantry. Maybe I want to make sure that one of my models, one of my cards isn't one that they can do. The one with the hemisphere sensor, you might be like, oh, well, they've got a sensor bot because they've got a sensor bot, so maybe I won't take that. Obviously, you don't know what's on their list until after you've chosen them, but you can make assumptions based on their army, which then means you can also then throw people off by thinking, hey, I've taken Hack Islam. And then they'll be like, oh, they might have doctors. And then you go, haha, I've taken no doctors. Fuck you. You know, like they'll kind of, there's this little bit of, counterplay, which is quite fun. So
it's a nice little mix up of it. So secondary classifieds.
Oh yes, secondary classifieds, yes. So they
Drawn
they
as usual.
they still work the same as how they always have, which is like randomly done. Which is nice because it offsets the known four classifieds, like, and also is a good reason why this classified is worth 3 points because it is randomly generated. It has to be different from the four main classifieds, so there is a little bit of limitation there. But it's good because it's secret and it's worth 3 points, and it still then incentivizes you to have somewhat of a generalist list that can attempt to do any classified, because you lean your list really heavily into hacking, for example, and then you get the engineering classified as your random one, or like, obviously there's two classifieds you draw, but let's just say one of them is one you've already played that's in the middle, and the other one's like HVT retro engineering, and you've got no engineers on your table. You're like, shit, I've locked myself out of 3 points. So it's still a good idea to make sure that you have as many bases covered, but you don't have to. It's not like completely. It's not like a mandatory. It's not like a fail. Like a what's the word? What's the word I'm thinking of? Like a. I guess it's not mandatory that you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's cool. In the scenario, the option of secure HVT is only allowed to replace a secondary classified. Oh, actually, okay, so that's a good point. Yeah, so even if you do get HVT retro engineering, you can always do secure the HVT. So that's good to know.
And that's just highly classified rules.
It is highly classified rules. Now, what I was just thinking about here before is this isn't countermeasures, right? So the HVT will not disappear when you do an HVT classified on it.
No.
So there's nothing stopping you from just making your two open classifieds, two of them that work off the HVT.
You could base your list around like Zoe, who's a
Yeah.
hacker engineer who can walk up, retro engineer, and then data scan the HVT.
Yeah. Okay,
The same one.
that's a good point. Yeah. And then just like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah. Make her the master breacher, because there's nothing special about the master breacher in this mission. Like, it's not like cryogenics where you need to capture, like, need to threaten or dominate a zone. They're just a master breacher. They get an extra inch. If you've got one of those dual specialist profiles, send them out to do something that's just a little bit quicker.
Yeah, and they get the decharges, and they also get, it's no gravity zone again, so the plus 1 inch bonus applies, which is really useful. Yeah, so yeah, if you have, like say Zoe, she's now moving 5-4, and she's got the decharges, which I think she's got anyway, actually, because she's an engineer. But yes, that's a good point. In no gravity zone in this one, and I think that was all of the special rules. So yeah, this mission is probably my favorite of the four. I like highly classified anyway. Maybe it's because I'm a hack player and I just like can do all the things very well. But I like the ability. I like the counterplay here in picking your missions, and how you can maybe even get inside your own head a little bit. Because you'd be like, oh, but what's everyone else going to be taking? Are they all going to be taking extreme prejudice, or should I just take capture to make, to like kind of throw people off?
Yeah. It's probably one of, like, for a custom mission, it's very Infinity. The fact that you've got that counterplay, it almost feels like an ARO mechanic in selecting the classifieds.
Well, I think
it's a small-ish change that honestly, it's a small change that just changes the entire game.
I think there's not, like, the only other mission that springs to mind that has this level of counterplay is countermeasures, because it has, because you can burn
selecting,
because you can burn a card, which I really enjoy, and this gives you a kind of similar ability. And there are no other missions I think that do that. Obviously there is Intel Com and all that sort of jazz, but doesn't really factor in that much. This is quite important.
Well, like Intel comes a personal decision, right? The selection of your classifieds here is a well, it can be a personal decision, but it can be a decision of against your opponent.
Yeah, and like
Like you were saying, if you're playing Ariadna and you've got even a semblance of hacking, you just go, I'm just going to put a hacking objective there. If you've got tons of hacking, I'm going to put 2. And there's nothing really the Ariadna player can do. But conversely, the Ariadna player can go, he's got no CC ability, bam, Predator, bam, Extreme Princess.
yeah. Something else just came to mind there is if someone does reveal an HVT. I mean, and I guess this will happen in normal games of highly classified actually, so it doesn't really make a difference. But if they have leaned into HVT classifieds and they're going second, for example, then you just, or it doesn't matter which order they go in.
You
actually,
grab the HVT and run.
You just make the HVT and put it in the most dickhead of position you can, and make sure you've got all of your guns covering it, so that they have the hardest time possible getting those objectives covered.
You can grab the HVT, can't you?
Yeah, I can't remember. Sometimes it says you can't. Sometimes it says you can. I feel like you can't in this one, but yeah. Jordan on the chat says that he played this mission and he ran a Razyat, who is a veteran troop, who also have decharges, and he chose Net Undermine and Sabotage for his 2 classifieds, and basically got them done in 2 orders. Walked on the table, Net Undermine, whip check, decharge check, whip check, done. But those are also 2 quite easy objectives for your opponent to do, potentially, depending on what your opponent's bringing and what they have. But veterans aren't exactly hard to come by, and decharges are on lots of different models.
Well, the main thing got here is the parachutist deployment zone, because Net Undermine's the one of do a whip check or whatever on a piece of scenery wholly within their deployment zone.
No, Net Undermine is do a whip check in your opponent's half of the table. You're thinking of mapping is the one where you have to do it inside your opponent's deployment zone, which actually admittingly would have been actually no, because you have to be a hacker or a forward observer, I think, to do mapping.
Is that the one?
Yeah, Net Undermine's the one I do with my Speculo all the time, because they're already in your opponent's half the table and they're a veteran and they just go, or elite or whatever they are. They just go like whip check, whip 14, done. Easy. Yeah, so this mission is great. I really like it. So we'll just go back to the beginning. I'll take this off of. Have you got anything else you want to say on this mission?
No.
Nope. Cool. All right, we'll get rid of that. Okay, so this lineup. What do you think the 4 missions, and what army or composition are you sort of thinking is what you'd be looking to build for this lineup? Oh, you've gone quiet. There you are.
No, I'm thinking.
Oh, okay.
Making sure my words count. I feel like it's almost you would make a list for Frontline, Sensor Field, and Risk.
No,
probably you do Frontline and Sensor Field, and then Clighy Hassified and Rescue.
I feel like you just make one list for Rescue and another list for the other 3.
That's true too.
Because Rescue's the only mission without an exclusion zone. It's also the only mission that doesn't really care about classifieds or specialist troops. So you can just go these 3 and then the other 1, and you're probably fine there.
Yeah, fair.
The only thing I've been thinking of building lists for this mission is, because you get the bonus on engineer and chain of command for sensor field, then it makes me go, well, I should probably make sure that I'm including those on my highly classified list lineup so therefore I'm sort of feeling like I'm building a list that has those, that then means that I need to look at the classifieds that I can use. So I'm looking at Sabotage, I'm looking at like Net Undermine, Retro Engineering, and it depends on my list. I'm like, oh, but now I'm kind of like skewing my list in that direction. But then there's
Yeah.
Frontline, which has got 4 classifieds. It doesn't care about which ones what your army is. You get what you get what you're given. So there's a nice little bit of like conflict there, I guess.
I think with sensor field and every single specialist getting the multi scanners, if you are a high whip army, nomads, Aleph, Hak Islam, worrying too much about the engineer and
Oh,
chain of
mate, it
command
makes a fucking
bonus,
difference. I'll tell you that.
it
One die,
can.
one dice.
It's
No, mate, no, it does. One dice on a 14 is not as good as 2017s. As someone who
well, no,
played on the weekend and literally couldn't roll to place a scanner on a 14, I wish I had 2017s. Like, I really like. It's very important that you get that dice go down.
Look, I'll admit that I have been blessed and not had to deal with that situation too much.
Okay.
I get it. I think if you got a good engineer or an easy way of putting an engineer into your list, or vice versa, if you've got an easy way of putting
Chain of command.
Chain of command. So
Yeah.
the one that really pops to mind for me is Tai Shan, who's a forward
Okay.
observer and a chain of
Chain of
command troop,
command.
as well as a character. So she's veteran. So as far as when you get to Clighy Hassified, she's going to be really good for that. So I suppose if I was going
Yeah.
to say anything in particular, is take a look at those profiles that can do multiple
Yes.
of the those classified objectives. So Tai Shan, we just said before, Zoe and Pywell. Zoe and Pywell are perfect because you can engineer, hacker, and a forward observer all, in one model.
I'm not so sure about her though, only because I'm not sure that she's going to be the one placing your. No, sorry. I guess she will be. Yeah, I guess so. No, I mean, like, she's good. Don't get me wrong. I just think that you're also looking for fast specialists. Oh, I guess Pywell is a fast specialist, so yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. No, I'm using it as an example. I'm not
Yeah.
saying take her particularly.
Yeah, but I
But
know you mean.
any of those ones that can double up, even Pandora in Steel Phalanx, who has the medkit +1 burst and is a hacker, if I remember correctly.
Yes, she is. Yes.
Right. Any profiles like that, try and take. Does Hak Islam have something like that? Like sort of a double up? I mean, I think you've got a lot of specialists.
Heaps and heaps.
With like D charges as well. And that's another thing. Profiles with random D charges, because a good fallback, if you can't think of another classified, is sabotage.
Sabotage, yeah. No, absolutely.
Like, yes, it's easy for both of you to do, but if you get enough D charges here and there, you got.
Well, that's why in my list I took on the weekend is running Rama. So I had Carmen and Batard who have sensor, or Batard is sensor, and then I had a Rafik Red Fury that also has sensor. So sensor is quite useful in that lineup because, well, not so much rescue, but the other 3 missions, because you are able to
do the identity check.
You can do the identity. I think you can do a couple of classifieds off a sensor. You can also reveal your opponent's camo in the midfield on turn 1 before they start placing their sensors, right? You just go reveal them and then send something in to kill it, either Beast Hunter or whatever you've got. And then thirdly, they're specialists, so they can place sensors themselves. And they've got forward observers, so they can do data scan. So they themselves are compact. Well, sorry, not Batard, but like Carmen's a veteran, so she can do net undermine and stuff. So they all have multiple roles that they can act on, but also they've got like attacking roles as well, so they can reveal camo, they can attack camo, they can place scanners, and they can do classifieds. So they do all those things for not very many points. Yeah, so I'm quite digging those quite a lot.
Yeah. So, what do you think of putting a custom mission into a tournament? I mean, I know that ANZAC Cup's a bit more of a fun sort of thing, but if you saw, Interplanetario had a competition and they picked the best, most voted mission and they used that for Interplanetario, Do we think it's a good idea to see more of it?
Yeah, so I think it's good time to move on to sort of custom missions in general. I love custom missions in Infinity. I have seen them around, in CB, and people will make little missions and there'll be fun little things to do. But I've really enjoyed the community approach to custom missions. And I think it speaks to the community a lot in that we are trying very hard not to make like dumb, weird missions. Like we know like they are weird missions sometimes and they are a bit funny and stuff, but they're all with the intention of making the game better. Like every mission I've read so far has been like, this is what I think could improve the game, and this is my attempt at doing that. And I read them and I'm like, I can immediately see what you're trying to do to improve the experience of players in the game and to make them enjoy the game more. So from that point of view, I want to see more, because the more custom missions that come out, the more CB look at them and go, oh, that's a good idea. Because, CB have for the last, 3 or 4 years been including them into ITS, cryogenics, panic room. Was Frostbite one? I can't remember if Frostbite one was one. But there's been, they've been, a Mind Wipe is the other one, right? And they haven't all been like super popular necessarily. Countermeasures, right? How, like, fucking, who was it who made Countermeasures again? He was an Australian, up north. God.
Don't know.
I'm so sorry, I've forgotten. Someone tell me in the chat. But that was a tectonic, like that was a huge shift in the game. Like that one mission just created such a ripple effect in the community of how a mission is built and how it's played. And in so much that I think it's actually had an effect on every other mission that's been added to the game since. So I think they're great. And I haven't seen an abuse of power, I guess, in custom missions so far. Like I haven't seen someone just be like, here's my idea for custom mission that really favors Toha or whatever.
Yeah.
Like no one's done that yet. No, everyone's been like, we want to make the game more fun, more enjoyable. This is my idea. And people are generally very receptive of it.
I think custom missions feeds into the fact that people appreciate the fact that Infinity is balanced. And so when it comes to making missions, they want to try and make them balanced.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, they get it right. I mean, the custom missions that we played on the weekend and the missions here, especially Clighy Hassified.
No, actually, that's one thing I have to say about that mission. Change the fucking name. Make it pronounceable, please.
But
I just call it Slyly Hassified now because I don't know how else.
But they are very balanced. I mean, some other ones like Mind Wipe, I think favored like hacking-ish armies more. It was something that, like in Ariadna, you couldn't really have a Uber hacker because the only one you had was a war driver, and it didn't fit. Like the war driver just doesn't fit into Ariadna.
Yeah, Mind Wipe is one of my lesser favorite custom missions. Yeah. Honestly, I didn't really enjoy it that much, but I can see what they're trying to do with it, which is good. Like, the mechanical changes.
I think that's the best way. And we see it in Clighy Hassified, we see it in Mind Wipe, where it is a twist on the missions that we love, but have gotten bored of playing over and over again. So,
that's a good point.
Mind Wipe is a mash of unmasking and looting and sabotage. Clighy Hassified obviously is a very small change that makes a very big difference to highly classified. Frostbite was I think it was a bit of a change. It was a combination of biotech, Vor, and Frontline.
Something like that. Yeah. I think what you were saying about the people being bored about it, right? So bored of the missions. I think that's been a running trend for the last little while. Is people don't dislike supplies, right? Or supremacy or Frontline, right? We all love those missions, or we like them. We play them, right? They're good missions. but it does feel like there's, for the last few years, we've had 19 missions that are the same or more or less the same as they have been for the last, I think I got into this game in season 8, so it's 6 years. The same fucking missions. And then every year they'll be like, here's one mission that's different. And everyone's like, yay. But they're like, it's one mission. What's going on?
Yeah.
So I think people are just kind of like breaking out into this creativity space and going like, what if we just turn this mission upside down? Does that work? And like that kind of playfulness and creativity that's going on in the community right now, the last couple of years has been really, really interesting to see, like the drive from players to want to have missions that are different, or that play like a Warhammer mission, or play like a Malifaux mission, or play like a whatever mission.
And
it's really cool.
And they're always going to have, like, you're always going to have your your stock standard on like firefight, frontline, whatever. But there are other things where, like, I'm missing an old mission. I think it was called Antenna Field.
Oh yeah, that's from like way back.
Where it was like the objectives were like 4-inch wide hackers, or like 8-inch wide hackers.
Oh god, transmission matrix.
Yes, transmission matrix. That's exactly what it was.
Boop.
So like, there has been plenty of creativity on CB's part, and I think they probably need to take the chance again. What's up?
No, sorry, my microphone just went up for no reason. I was just adjusting the screen because it's gone all funny. Yeah, I think there is. What was I going to say on it? There was something I was going to say. Yeah, so custom missions seem to have really come to the fore in the last 3 years because of the pandemic. Not because of the pandemic, because people went onto TTS, and TTS is just like a big sandbox, right, for people to experiment with, like table design, list design, tournament design, everything. And people were like, let's make a mission where everything is lava. And you're like, does it work? No. Let's make a mission where you can only have one of each model, like the Highlander series. Like, they're doing all these weird and wonderful things that makes people go, hang on, this works, actually. Let's try a mission with it. And then they play it, and then it goes out to the wider community, and everyone's like, yeah, this is fun. This is good. And it's actually strangely balanced. You know, like, they're not like, hey, this is fun for a laugh. It's like, actually, this is actually a fun way to play. Now, obviously, Countermeasures came out. Countermeasures came out before that, and I think Countermeasures was a mission based off a 40k mission.
I don't know if it was based off it, but it was very similar to the way that
the 40k
something war where, like, a 40, you would draw cards.
Yeah, you draw cards, right? And like I say, it introduced a mechanic to the game that was like missing before, this counterplay, right? That never existed before, and I think people really enjoyed that. You know, then we had Mind Wipe, where, hey, there's 2 buttons, but when you push one, you can't push it again. You have to push the other. Another new mechanic that people are like, oh, that was fun. That's different, right? Then we've got Cryogenics, right, where there's 4 things, but there's a dude inside, 2 dudes inside it that you don't know where they are, and you have to roll dice. It's randomized, but it's slightly weighted. And you're like, oh, that's fun. That's interesting. That kind of changes my mindset on things, right? Unmasking had that as well, right, where you have to like guess where it was, and that again injects a bit of fun and creativity to the game.
Yeah.
But
I think what you were pointing out, especially with the last 2 custom missions that you mentioned, is that sometimes they can get a bit overly complicated,
right?
Especially cryogenics that we've seen recently. I mean, hell, even like sensor fields, a pretty simple mission as far as like how you actually score the objectives, and even that's confusing people.
Yeah, that's a good point you're raising there about just the pitfalls of making custom missions, because sometimes I wonder, well, not sometimes I wonder, I do wonder if some of these custom missions are made, and it's, you know how I was saying before, like, people are making these custom missions to try different things out, or to make the game better, right? And I think that's what most people are trying to do, is make these custom missions to make the game better. And you can see what they're trying to do, but you wonder if sometimes it's just like, it's too much. Like, it's You
Yeah,
know,
I, I,
like for example, like, hey, Infinity may have a problem with Alpha Strike being too strong in some areas. I mean, I don't think it's in our area. I don't think Melbourne has a huge Alpha Strike meta, or at least maybe we're just very good at defending. I don't know. But you can't deny online, or people will say Alpha Strike is really strong in Infinity. If you go first, then you're more likely to win. In walks Sensorfield and says, hey, if you go first and don't kill your opponent, you could get 2 points. And I just wonder if
yeah,
that's like their way of being like, hey, we're trying to balance the game.
I think that is a good point. Is that the missions in general can tamp down um, on that sort of impulse of, if I just destroy my opponent the first turn, right, I win. Whereas with the restriction of orders, you can make the mission say, no, no, if you want to win, you have to do these things instead.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as like fixing a meta, yeah, custom missions. If people are having big problems with a certain sort of faction that's coming out in the meta and it's sort of ruining the game for them, custom missions can work to sort of alleviate that thing. So, Sensorfield's a great example where you can, you go in first, and the big advantage is to not kill your opponent with all your orders, but to spend, 5, 6, whatever orders putting down your sensors, and then maybe like, chipping away at 1 or 2 orders.
Mm.
Whereas if you take a look at the typical missions, like let's like even like Panic Room, Biotech Vor, Frontline, Decap, even things like Supremacy or Quadrant Control, if you devastate your opponent and then spend 1 or 2 orders just holding your zone, um, they've got an uphill battle for the rest of the game.
Mm.
Um, whereas if you make it something like even Unmasking is a good example of, if you spend all your time messing around with your opponent and it doesn't work out like perfectly, you you as the person who is going second can press the buttons, maybe work around this or kill this really big piece, so you're only taking away 1 order, but you can do all the objectives, and then you can like the um guard the consoles.
Mm.
So I think that's where potentially objectives where your opponent can't press that particular button, but like let's say there's a second button on the field that then you
Yeah.
can't push, is a
Mm-hmm.
really good thing to have in Infinity, because it means the person who's going first presses that button and goes, I'm going to go and defend the other button because that's part of his objectives.
So what you mentioned there before about metas or areas where people are playing is in is a potential pitfall of custom missions, because they can become very personal, right? They can become very reflective
Yeah.
of an individual's experience of the game and what they think maybe is broken or wrong or whatever with the game or overpowered. And this is their ability then to check that. And it could be, and it might be right for the meta that they live and play in. It might be completely alien and wrong for another part of the world. And I think that, like what I mentioned before, but Alpha Strike is, I don't think we've got a big problem with it here in Melbourne. So maybe it's not as pronounced, or maybe it's not as clear why a mission is built in a certain way to deter it when it's not a problem, or tags or bear pods or whatever the flavor of the month is. So I think that's maybe one thing to watch out for. And I haven't really seen it yet. Like I said before, it's people mostly being pretty genuinely concerned
Yeah.
or interested in the game and making it better and trying things, rather than going like, I hate Toha, I'm gonna build a mission that fucks Toha. Like that's like, sorry to use Toha as a whipping boy again, but that is a concern. That is something that
Yeah,
may
it's like
happen.
it's like all forward observer based or something like that.
Although I would like to see more forward observer based
I
specialist
would too.
bonuses.
I
Or
would too.
just
I would
any.
like to see them get the bonuses.
I was building a mission before that had a forward observer bonus because everyone's got forward observers, and there's more of them arguably in Ariadna and Toha. We never see the love for those armies, so I would like to see that. And also,
I honestly think it's the flash pulse.
no, not every forward observer has flashballs for stars, but I think
Most of them do. But
most of them do, yeah. But I think the thing that I would like to see, just as a bit of a segue, why I would like to see forward observer bonuses in missions is because currently you've got a skirmisher, and the skirmisher has a forward observer profile and a killer or a hacking profile. Which of those two profiles are you going for? Regardless of what they're armed with. Yeah, hacking, right? Like 9 times out of 10, you're going for hacking unless you're strapped for points or the forward observer's got a particularly interesting weapon. Now, add in a forward observer bonus mission to a lineup, and suddenly people are like, fuck, I'm not going to take the shrouded hacker. I'll take the shrouded forward observer or the Guilang forward observer or whatever forward observer.
I suppose my only, and I don't think it really would end up being that much of an issue, is that everybody has forward observers. You'll see this weird spamming of flash pulses. It'll be
of sensor bots.
Oh no, just like
right, okay.
just like everybody's got a flash pulse. There are going to be so many forward observers on the field.
Yeah, but I think in the majority of cases, your button pushers are your forward deploying skirmishers who will have a forward observer profile and a hacking profile, and the forward observer profile it's often just the same as the hacking profile, but just cheaper. But they won't. Yeah. But now they'll be like, "Oh, I'll take it," and that actually might have a pretty significant effect on list building because suddenly you've got like half an SWC spare. You've got a non-hackable model that can still target things. Like, I think that could be quite interesting.
I would like to see, in like custom missions, I like to see a couple things. I'd like to see some different bonuses.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's just applied to different aspects of the unit, headquarters troops, elites, veterans, that sort of thing.
Okay.
That's not an exhaustive list.
Like a bonus if you have the veteran or elite or headquarters. If you're a headquarters troop, I know that's very limited actually, so maybe not so good.
Yeah, well, you just do headquarters and something else.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
But also things like with the Master Breacher, they get a decharge and they get the terrain. I'd like to see that sort of thing continue. Like I don't know if you remember. What was it called? What was it called?
The data tracker.
Data tracker. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Things like that where like they become a specialist or they become
a specialist.
Else.
Yeah, that would be cool.
So like it would be great if you had a mission that required hacking. And so like I don't understand why in the okay, I kind of understand, but in Mindwipe, why if you can make anything the Uber hacker and if they're not already a hacker, they get a hacker device plus with one program, which is the Uber hacking program.
Oh, I see.
Right. So that way it disadvantages nobody.
Oh, right. Okay. So you become a hacker, but just have this one program, which is actually kind of bad then because then you can be hacked.
Yes, exactly.
Downside though.
Put things where like you can't put it on a dog warrior and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's still come under the rules of like, you have to have can't be impetuous or something like that. So, or whatever
exactly.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you got nothing else, I just wanted to close it off from something I mentioned at the very beginning with Operation Vine Cutter, which is being run in New South Wales. And it goes towards our sort of custom mission discussion, whereas it's the idea of a custom tournament. So this obviously means that you can't really run it in ITS or anything like that. But the way that Vine Cutter is being run is he's splitting up the people into 2 teams. Now, it doesn't really necessarily matter what team you end up on, other than the fact that if one particular team wins, so in this case, you've got the good guys and the bad guys. The the team with the most winners of like the round one mission determines what the round two mission is.
Yeah,
And the
right.
one who wins the round two mission determines what the round three mission is. So it's this narrative sort of thing. So when it was being explained to me, the idea is if the good guys win the first mission, it's about them. It's about them breaching into this like facility where and the bad guys are defending. But if they win, it's about the good guys trying a different avenue of attack, and the bad guys trying to keep up with them.
Mm-hmm.
And while I don't think it's like that sort of thing really addresses um, the sort of things we're talking about balance and trying to tamp things down in a meta,
Yeah.
I think it is a really good thing, just like a slow grow to sort of bring people together,
Yeah.
and to give this sort of like common purpose. I mean, I remember playing just your Thunder thing, the Thunderstorm over Helheim. While I didn't get to do half of it, the hey, you've got a spec ops. Here's some things for your spec ops to do. Right, is something additional to the game of Infinity that's just really interesting.
Well, yeah, like that part of it was about like especially aimed at like players who maybe weren't that concerned about placing on a podium and they just wanted to like get the trophy for being the coolest spec ops. Like that was
Yeah,
what that was about. And I think I like the idea of having, and I think it speaks to like the out thinking about outside of the box of Infinity mission selection or the way Infinity tournaments are run because you know it has the standard format, two list format. You know the missions in advance. So you build the lists for the missions. But why not just have the missions be randomized on the day, right? Like
yeah,
like that's not normal, and it may not be the people's preference. But there's a bunch of other game systems that do that, so it's not completely unheard of. Um, or have
yeah.
a case of like, hey, if we'll play first mission will be this mission, but if blah 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 whatever reason we'll end up playing Biotech 4 instead or whatever it is. And I've heard like I think Rule City Raid does something random like that where they'll just drop Biotech 4 into the 5 mission format for the crack. And so long as people know about it, I think it's perfectly fine. And you're right, it doesn't really speak to the larger balance issues in the game and why custom missions exist, but I think it's
Yeah.
great when people do think outside of the box. And one of the things that I've been thinking about for a while is why we are so constrained to this 10 OP mission limit. Like, sure, like things can be cap out at 10 points, but why do missions always have to add up to 10? Why can't they
Well,
why can't they add up to 15 and then the game
I
just
was
ends when
thinking
you get to
about
10?
that, and I think that's partly why I think maybe even we need to sort of like promote, the custom missions, right? Custom missions lead to custom tournaments, and I think the thing is that Infinity, Infinity has this sort of, I guess it's almost got like it's like it's sort of robotic in the fact that you put in you put in like when you go to roll dice you're always doing sort of the math in your head.
Mm,
um there's a little bit less of like and you see it in sort of like Warhammer and some other games where you just want to throw the dice, right? Damn the consequences.
okay.
um and I think that's where like the custom missions breaks out into back into the like what it is, which is we're playing with toy soldiers.
Yeah, no, Infinity can feel a little bit constrained in some ways because of the way the missions are built and the game is played. And it's a great way. Like it's a good set of rules to have. There's some good guardrails around there to ensure that missions are they always play
Hmm.
out in a sort of way that you can kind of make sense of. That's why some of these custom missions have been so provocative in that they do they kind of bend some of the rules a little bit and they kind of make some changes. But
Yeah,
I
if
would I
like
would
if
love
like
it. If
Like
we had,
if you just gave like a bonus, I don't know what it is. I'm not going to try and come with one now to medium infantry, heavy infantry, characters, or something like that. That changes the way people build their list and play the game, right?
mm,
Because I remember in Frostbite, because the heavy infantry got like their own like little personal heating units.
yeah.
Um, people ran more heavy infantry, even if it wasn't necessarily great.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
For your
okay. Yeah,
army.
yeah. Just make people try it. Well, which is all about what each season's about as well, is making people try different things. You know, like
Yeah,
last season it was bikes. This season it's sensor bots. Next season, who knows? It'll be, I don't know, Eva bots or whatever. But the point I was going to make before we wrap up is, oh fuck, I just forgot what it was. God damn you, Jacob! It was about. Oh yeah, that's what it was.
God
Um,
damn it.
I was gonna say no. I was gonna say that the cap on 10 OP. This is why we're running the classified quarterly challenge, right? Because again, classifieds have gotten pretty stale. Pretty people know which one they want to run, and they know if they get this one, they're gonna do it every time, like Extreme Prejudice, well, every time. So we just this is our way as a podcast to say to the community, hey, what do you want to see? What do you want CB to put in the next classified deck? Give us some ideas, put them out there, because if you don't shout them out, then CB might not take them on. And that's why I love seeing these different classified objectives, these different missions ideas, because CB are hopefully looking at it and going, oh, that's a good idea. Like even the I don't want to go on to too much of get on my own like little brain in here, but like why do we have to have fixed objectives right on the table? You know, you have supremacy, they've got to be 16, 18 up and 12 in. Why don't we just have a mission where the objectives are placed by the players before the start of the game within certain parameters? You know, they can be placed
Again, that's
yeah.
that's a Warhammer thing where before you choose your sides, you place down the objectives.
Yeah, well, like I mean, Song of Ice and Fire is the same thing. Or sorry, not Song of Ice and Fire. There's like what's the mission? I can't remember the game now. But like, yeah, there's lots of games where you just like you place the objectives down. Kings of War, a whole bunch of games like you place them. Malifaux has them as well, right? You just place the objectives down wherever you think they are, and then you roll for sides, and then you play the mission. And there's no reason why Infinity can't work like that, other than it just hasn't worked like that before. Which is why I do like seeing missions like Sensorfield that have end of turn scoring, and people are like, "Whoa, what the fuck is a turn?" But you see why it's there, right? Because it kind of isn't a thing that's been done before. Maybe it should be. So and like Josh just on the chat talking about Song, he says he likes how Song does it. A Song of Ice and Fire, for those who don't know, the vernacular, because I don't like saying ASOI, whatever it's called. Victory point maximum relating to the size of the army. So 30 points is 8, 40 is 10, 50 is 12. So, you know, the game will just carry on until you get to that point. Whereas, why can't Infinity do that? We just play 3 rounds until we get to 10 points. Whoever gets 10 points first by the end of
the only reason
wins.
at the moment that Infinity doesn't do that, oh fuck! No, why am I forgetting it now?
Well,
I think the only reason Infinity's not doing that is because the size of the game at like 200 points, say, can be sort of the same as at 300 points. Whereas for Song and Ice of Fire, I imagine the armies get bigger. It goes from looks of skirmish to a bigger battle.
Well, it's still only ever played on a 4x4, or no, I think it does play played on a 6x4, but not very often.
I'm not talking about the battlefield. It's more or less like.
Oh, okay. But I think the thing I'm thinking of actually that is a little bit of a reason why maybe Infinity does play uniquely to other games, right? You know, why maybe there isn't as much of a crossover to 40k or Malifaux or Song of Ice and Fire or whatever it is. Because Infinity only goes for 3 rounds. Every other game goes for 6 or 7 or 5, right? There is half as many rounds in Infinity as there is every other game. Now, you could argue it's actually not, because there's the ARO mechanic, which means that you're actually playing 6 rounds, but you're not really playing 6 rounds, because if in a game of Supremacy, you're only scoring 3 times. Whereas in every other game, like 40k, whatever, you're scoring 6 times, which means there's more granularity in how many times you can score and how you can score over the course of the game than in Infinity, where there's only 3 times you can score, which then compresses everything you have to do. Which I think is that's just a feature of the game, not something that you can really, not something you can change. Although I would be interested to see what a game of Infinity would look like over 6 rounds. I mean, it would take 3 hours, it'd take 4 hours, but like I'd do it.
I think. Well, considering that in 3 rounds.
Can you imagine what a game of Infinity would look like over 6 rounds? Actually, I just thought about that.
It would. Wild. Either you'd both end up with like. It'd be like a chess game where both your pieces are just kings, or it'd be just it would almost always end up with you one opponent wiping out the other.
I don't know, because I feel like if you had six rounds, you'd take it easier, you'd take it slower, you'd pace yourself more. I think there is, people complain about the Alpha Strike in Infinity. Is it because there's only 3 rounds in the game and you have to use them wisely?
You know what? You could be onto something there.
If you had twice as many turns to play Infinity, would the game be better? It would take longer, but would it be better?
I think Infinity has very much been based around like hard, fast, like action.
Yeah. It's the way the game is played, and that's why we love it.
To slow it down, I think would be. I think that would be looking at going at like 4, 5, and 600 point games.
Maybe, but then you'd be like 8-hour games or something. I don't know. I don't really know why Infinity takes as long as a game of 40k with half as many turns. Sorry, I do know why, because the arrow mechanic, but I don't know.
It's everything that makes Infinity, AOO, line of sight, dealing with cover and movement, all of that sort of shit.
Yeah, no, I get it. All right, is there anything else we want to chat about tonight, or are we going to wrap her up?
I think we're going to wrap it up, put a bow on it, and ship it out.
Okay, sounds good. Well, that was a good little chat actually at the end there about custom missions. I think we hit on a few points I hadn't really thought about before. But in summary, custom missions are good, and CB should listen to the community because we've got some really fucking good ideas, even if some of them are a bit convoluted and trying to do too much too quickly. Personally, that's my personal opinion. But yeah, no, they're good.
Go back to ITS 1. I want to play missions from back then.
ITS 1, yeah, I have no idea. Like I started tag. Not what's it called? Tagline. Tagline was the one I started at. That was the one with Tony Macchiana.
I think I was about the same. Maybe
same time.
Maybe I knew the name before. I think I knew of Infinity during the Alive Crisis.
Alive Crisis. Yeah, that was season 9, I think, or season 8.
Yeah.
8, 9. I can't remember. Anyway, we're supposed to be wrapping up. So you've been listening to A Loss of Lieutenant. My name is Kevin.
I'm Jacob.
And good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.